Hello everyone, before the start of the video I would like to request you all to like and subscribe. That's it, thank you and enjoy. Chapter 36, The Crown of Desire and the Shattered Mirage. Chapter 36, The Crown of Desire and the Shattered Mirage. The heat of Muspelheim was more than environmental, it was alive. The air shimmered with hatred, longing, and the faint hum of magic so dense it distorted perception itself. The deeper I went into the Crimson Veins plateau, the more I felt the atmosphere pulling at me, not my body, but my mind. Every heartbeat seemed louder, every thought, slower. Even HIME's voice, normally clear, composed, flickered with static. Greater than, Ren-sama, data interference increasing exponentially. Illusory fields detected across 3 layers of reality. Recommend immediate deployment of countermeasures. Yeah, I murmured, scanning the landscape. She's close. The magma field stretched endlessly, broken only by obsidian pillars that rose like spires toward a blood-red sky. And at the center, suspended above a molten chasm, hovered a throne of glass and flame. On it sat a woman made of light and shadow both. Her form was perfect, too perfect, shifting subtly every time I blinked, as if she was trying to become everything I desired and feared at once. Her hair flowed like liquid gold, her eyes burned like twin suns behind a veil of smoke. When she smiled, the air itself trembled. Greater than, world enemy detected, class, lust. Level, 112 classification, illusion incarnate, sin type entity. Battlefield modifier, infinite mirage field active. Traveler _R, she said, her voice wrapping around my mind like silk. It wasn't speech, it was sensation, warmth, temptation. You wandered so far just to see me. Tell me, what is it you crave? I grinned, summoning my twin blades from my inventory. The red glow of world break pulsed faintly through my arm. Right now, I said, your data. Her laughter echoed through the plateau, melodic, haunting, echoing across layers of sound and illusion. And then, the world fractured. The battle of infinite mirrors. The throne exploded into light as dozens of spectral copies of lust appeared across the lava fields, each shimmering like heat waves. Every one of them smiled, moving in perfect unison. Greater than, illusion field expanding, HIME reported, her eyes glowing golden as defense barriers manifested around me. Estimated active constructs, 73. Then 73 targets it is. I activated doppelganger form, my body splitting into multiple after images, each an independent combat shell. The magma reflected a dozen versions of me, each brandishing energy chains that shimmered like ribbons of silver light. The battle erupted in silence, explosions of color and distortion. My shackles of karmic silence lashed out, cutting through the illusions, binding 3, of her projections. But each one I caught dissolved instantly into ash and light. Greater than, false signatures, HIME said sharply. Her core remains unidentified. Then came her charm, a wave of crimson light sweeping outward from every illusion. For a split second, I felt my vision blur, my heart race, commands stuttering. Greater than, warning, status abnormality detected, frenzy, madness, confusion. Greater than, counteracting, HIME's voice sliced through the haze. Deploying absolute resistance barrier. A luminous wall of golden hexagons burst into existence around me, and the charm shattered against it. I gasped as clarity returned. Thanks, I breathed, that was close. Greater than, my function is defense, she replied simply. Yours is victory. Data collapse. Revision. Lust flickered again, her voice now whispering from every direction. You hide behind your machine. You're so afraid of wanting something, why not let me show you what desire feels like? Tempting, I muttered, but I already have everything I need. I extended my arm, reality twisted, ultimate skill activated. Data collapse, revision. Every illusion around me shattered into streams of binary, fragments of her code unraveling midair. The system screamed in response, trying to rebuild her shattered projections, but I was already rewriting their parameters. Let's see how you handle this, I said. From the broken data, I emerged, dozens of copies of myself, forged from the remains of her illusions. Each one carried fragments of her abilities, turned against her. Her voice broke into a furious hiss. You dare corrupt my reflection? Who better to manipulate illusion than another illusionist? The battlefield became chaos incarnate, my constructs clashing with hers, collapsing and reforming faster than the eye could follow. Reality warped, Heat waves froze midair, magma turned to glass. Every few seconds, a new copy of her appeared, stronger, faster, but the real her remained unseen. HIME's intervention. HIME, I said through the combat link. Switch defense priority to full magic resistance. Greater than, confirmed. Light enveloped her form as her wings unfolded, radiant constructs of blue and silver. Her eyes blazed as she projected an absolute barrier, the strongest defensive spell she possessed. Skill activated. Absolute domain, nullification field. The air went silent. Every illusion that touched the barrier disintegrated instantly, their data unable to sustain form. Lust screamed, not in pain, but in rage. The voice that had once been sweet now dripped venom. Greater than, you can't cage what doesn't exist. Her body flickered into the air above the magma, manifesting at last, her true form, burning like molten glass. She raised her hands, and the entire plateau erupted into crimson flame. A sphere of pure heat and madness expanded outward, warping space itself. Greater than, Ren-sama. HIME shouted, the illusion field has merged with the environment. No safe zone remains. I smiled grimly. Then we burned together. World break. I drew on everything, every ounce of MP, every fragment of focus I had left. The red sigils of world break, my world champion ultimate skill, ignited along my arms. The air vibrated as the boundary between code and creation tore open. Ultimate skill activated. World break, origin rewrite. Crimson energy spiraled outward, ripping through her mirage like paper. The world froze, reality suspended mid-frame. I lunged. Doppelgänger shift, flickering behind her, my form splitting into 5 mirrored copies. Each one lashed out simultaneously with my shackles of karmic silence. The chains struck true, binding her arms, legs, and throat. For the first time, Lust screamed. Her illusions collapsed. The false sky shattered. The battlefield reverted to its molten core, magma roaring beneath us like applause. Greater than, target containment successful, HIME said. Resonance field stable for 12 seconds. 12's all I need. I raised my hand, focusing the last fragments of energy I had left. The sigils of data collapse reappeared, overlapping world break's circle. Reality itself stuttered. Data collapse. Revision, execute. The explosion wasn't sound, it was silence. The kind that devoured everything. When it cleared, there was nothing left of lust but fractal dust dissolving into light. Aftermath. I fell to one knee, gasping, my vision flickering red. HP, 5%. MP, 0%. Every system alert screamed in my interface, but I was still alive. Barely. HIME landed beside me, her wings dimming. Greater than, Ren-sama, victory confirmed. The world enemy entity Lust has been deleted. Estimated recovery time required, extensive. I laughed weakly. Take your word for it. The lava around us was quiet now, no illusions, no whispers, just the steady hum of a dead world breathing one last time. Greater than, Ren-sama, HIME said softly, kneeling beside me. You risked everything. Yeah, I murmured, looking up at the flickering sky. But it was worth it. She was strong. Greater than, so are you. I smiled faintly, my vision dimming as fatigue finally caught up. Maybe, but let's not do that again anytime soon. Greater than, agreed, and as the light of Muspelheim faded behind me, my consciousness slipped, not into darkness, but into quiet. In the silence, as data currents drifted, a single notification pulsed faintly at the edge of my vision. System message. You have defeated a world enemy, Lust. Unique data fragment acquired. Sin core, desire. Warning. Integration attempt not recommended. I smiled to myself before sleep claimed me. Yeah, I whispered. We'll see about that. End of chapter 36. The Crown of Desire and the Shattered Mirage. 0 comments 0 vote. Chapter 37. The Mirror of Reversal. Chapter 37. The Mirror of Reversal. Yggdrasil still burned in crimson light when I returned to Aeternum Sanctum, the echoes of my battle with Lust still fresh in the system logs, like scars across my combat interface. The Sanctum had never felt so quiet. No alerts, no messages, no voices but my own. Only the faint hum of data coursing through the crystal walls, soft as a heartbeat. Defeating a world enemy wasn't something most players could even imagine attempting alone. It had taken every ounce of my strength, every skill I'd ever mastered. World break had nearly shattered my avatar from the strain. The last thing I remembered before the screen dimmed was HIME's voice, low and clear. Victory confirmed, Ren-sama. Now, the victory felt hollow. I had the Sin Core of Desire, a glowing red crystal that pulsed faintly in my inventory, radiating power and potential. I didn't know why, but it almost felt alive. Every few seconds, it pulsed in rhythm with my heartbeat, like it could sense my curiosity. Ren-sama, HIME's voice came softly, breaking through my thoughts. Recovery is complete. System checks show no lasting damage. Shall I proceed with tactical analysis of the battle log? I shook my head. No need. I've already memorized everything that mattered. Then, what is your next objective? I leaned back in my chair, the one I'd modeled after the Crimson Throne from Muspelheim's magma fields. I'm going to find it. Define it. The mirror, I said, my voice almost a whisper. For a second, HIME said nothing. Then, clarify. Are you referring to the rumored world-class item, Mirror of Reversal? I nodded slowly. Exactly that. The idea had formed during my fight with Lust, somewhere between the first illusion and the last explosion of data. I had wondered, if I could defeat a world enemy and obtain its Sin Core, then could I become one? Not through corruption or loss of control, but through intention. If I could take what they were and invert it, maybe I could see the system from the other side. To do that, I needed a mirror. The Mirror of Reversal wasn't just a myth. It was one of those WCI entries the developers had teased early in the game's life cycle, a god-tier artifact capable of reflecting reality itself. No one had ever confirmed its existence, but there were enough fragments, whispers, and error logs floating around to make the story believable. The supposed function was simple. Anything that touched it could be inverted, fire to frost, light to darkness, even buffs into debuffs. With the right template data, it could rewrite one's status in the system. If the stories were true, it was the only artifact capable of flipping the world champion status into that of a world enemy. Of course, it was also said to be the most dangerous WCI ever made, because once it reversed something, it couldn't reverse it back. HIME, I said as I opened the inventory. How far do the archives trace the mirror's last known coordinates? Data fragments suggest Helheim, she replied instantly. No confirmed sightings, but overlapping anomalies in the region near the Obsidian Crypt. Last recorded event occurred during the Envy incident. That made sense. Envy had been the first player to ever become a world enemy, and when his avatar disintegrated, half the world's data flux had collapsed into Helheim. It would make perfect sense for the mirror, if it existed, to end up buried somewhere near there. I turned my head toward the floating hologram of the world map. Time to check the ground myself. Searching Helheim manually would take months, Ren-sama. Not manually, I said with a grin. We'll use a bigger lens. The golden light of the Grand Atlas flared around me. Out of all the world-class items the guild had collected, this one remained my favorite, not for its power, but for its precision. Unlike other WCIs that commanded destruction, the Grand Atlas was pure observation, a perfect map of everything within 100 square kilometers. It marked every ally, every hostile, every neutral, even monsters beneath the surface, tiny data points pulsing on its surface like stars. But the reason I needed it wasn't for what it showed, it was for what it didn't. WCI signatures cancelled one another out. Their effects clashed and repelled like magnets. If there was another world-class item hidden somewhere inside its scan radius, it would appear as a blank void, a silence in the data sea. HIME, I said, raising my hand as golden light spread out in waves across the simulated world. Initiate the Atlas sweep. Center on Helheim's southern hemisphere. I want everything between coordinates 57 degrees south and 80 degrees east. Understood. Deploying Grand Atlas field projection. Light rippled across the dark sky. The map unfolded. Layers of terrain, crypts, caverns, and ruins flickering in shifting gold. Data poured into my view like rivers, scrolling faster than I could read. For 20 minutes, we scanned. Dozens of minor relics appeared, some familiar, some lost to time. But no mirror. I narrowed my focus. Narrow the scan radius. Look for anomaly clusters, regions of complete null data. The world map contracted sharply, down to a single region. A large blank circle, an absence roughly 10 kilometers wide, appeared on the upper left quadrant of the scan, deep below Helheim's ice caverns. There it was. Ren-sama, HIME said. Coordinates locked. Subterranean region 1091, depth 6.2 kilometers. The anomaly's signature perfectly matches a world-class item suppression field. Then we've found it. Probability. 97.4%. Close enough. The teleportation sequence activated, and I stepped into the light. The sanctum's warm glow faded into the cold blue of Helheim's endless underworld. The temperature meter on my HUD plummeted instantly. Even with resistance buffs, frost crawled across my armor like living ice. The silence was suffocating. Helheim had always been beautiful in its own tragic way, a kingdom of glass bones and frozen sorrow. Every step I took echoed across a cavern filled with crystal stalactites and long-dead code fragments frozen midair. Ren-sama, HIME whispered through the link, environmental hazard minimal. Energy signature from the anomaly is unusual. I detect reflective frequencies similar to illusion magic, but much higher. Good, I muttered. That means it's reacting to us. We moved deeper through the tunnels, following faint pulses of light flickering through the ice. The path twisted, spiraling down like a glacier-built labyrinth. And then, at the very bottom, we found it. A single mirror stood embedded in a wall of frozen stone. It wasn't large, maybe the height of an ordinary player avatar, but its surface wasn't solid. It rippled faintly, like liquid glass breathing. Around it, the ground shimmered with concentric rings of silver light, runes flickering in ancient Yggdrasil code. Every few seconds, the mirror's surface shifted, showing not my reflection, but different versions of me. A copy with demonic wings. Another cloaked in fire. Another wearing the armor of a god. It was reflecting possibilities. Ren-sama, HIME's tone carried the faintest tremor, though it was only her programming. Confirmed. World-class item detected. Classification, mirror of reversal. Stability index, volatile. Approach with caution. I'll keep my distance, I said, taking a slow step forward. As I got closer, the air grew thick, heavy. The mirror seemed to sense me, rippling in recognition. Data lines along its frame pulsed, shifting from silver to crimson, then back again. And then, without warning, my reflection moved, on its own. It tilted its head and smiled. Ren-sama, caution, HIME warned, barriers flickering into existence around us. But the reflection didn't attack. It simply raised its hand, the same as mine, and pressed its palm against the inside of the mirror. When I mirrored the gesture, a ripple of energy passed between us, sharp but not hostile. Like a heartbeat syncing between two entities. For a moment, the world went still. And then the system spoke. World-class item detected. Mirror of reversal. Input required. Template for inversion. I froze. So it was real. And it worked exactly as the legends described. It could reverse anything. All it needed was a reference, something to invert. Ren-sama, HIME said softly. Do you wish to proceed with initialization? Not yet. I closed my hand, letting the light dim. We found it, but we're not ready. You intend to use the sin core of desire as the inversion template, she said flatly, already predicting my thoughts. I nodded. That's right. If this mirror can rewrite status flags, then I can use it to flip my world champion designation into world enemy using the sin core as the seed. But not here, not without preparation. Risk assessment. Catastrophic, HIME replied. Even if successful, your player data would be fundamentally altered. You may lose control of your avatar or access rights to the account. Maybe, I admitted, but we've always been about testing limits, haven't we? For a long moment, the two of us stood in silence before the mirror. Its surface flickered gently, showing me, not as I was, but as I could be. A form wrapped in silver flame, eyes burning with crimson light. Not human, not monster, something between. I stepped back and opened a portal. Let's go, HIME. We'll come back when we're ready. Acknowledged. Returning to Aeternum Sanctum, as the teleportation light consumed us, I took one last glance at the mirror. The reflection waved at me before vanishing into ripples of light. Back in the sanctum, I stood in the data vault where the sin core glowed faintly within its crystalline container. It pulsed like a heart, radiating quiet temptation. I reached out but didn't touch it. Not yet. Somewhere deep down, I knew this next step wasn't about power anymore. It was about understanding what it meant to exist inside a world like this, to push every system and find what lay beyond its boundaries. The mirror waited in Helheim, the sin core burned in my hand, and for the first time in years, I felt something new. Not excitement, not ambition, curiosity, pure, undiluted curiosity. And I smiled to myself, whispering under my breath, let's see what happens when we turn the world upside down. End of Chapter 37. The Mirror of Reversal. 0 comments, 0 vote. Chapter 38. The Sin of Lust. Chapter 38. The Sin of Lust. The world pulsed with static light as the command executed. A single ripple ran through the code of Yggdrasil, subtle, invisible to most players, but unmistakable to anyone attuned to the system. My vision blurred, my interface dimmed. Then, everything changed. There was no divine flash, no system voice explaining the transformation. No grand event, just a single, silent notification in the center of my display. Status change. Player traveler _R right pointing arrow world enemy, Sin of Lust. Base level increased. 100 right pointing arrow 120 cap enabled, starting level, 95. Sin core of desire integrated successfully. The screen flickered once, stabilizing. When my eyes adjusted, I realized I was still standing inside Aeternum Sanctum, but the world around me looked subtly altered. The crystal walls had gained a faint crimson sheen, like the color had deepened into something alive. Data streams that once flowed calmly now shimmered like heat haze, and the sound, the low hum of running code, had turned melodic, almost like it was breathing with me. I lifted my hand and opened my character interface. The word World Champion was gone. In its place, a new tag pulsed beneath my name. Traveler _R, World Enemy, Sin of Lust active. And below it, a single description line. Bearer of Desire Unbound, the one who seduces the code of the world to move at his will. For a long moment, I just stared. There were no fireworks, no celebratory banners, just data quietly rewriting itself, transforming every parameter of my being. My aura changed next. The pure white blue of illusion magic deepened into a glowing magenta hue, tendrils of data wrapping around my avatar like spectral ribbons. I could feel power flowing, raw, intoxicating, but not overwhelming. The kind of strength that didn't scream, but whispered, everything you desire, you can reach. I flexed my fingers. The shackles of karmic silence responded immediately, glowing faintly with the same hue, harmonizing with the Sin core's rhythm. Even the divine gear I wore adjusted itself, visually syncing to the transformation, red threads tracing across the white coat, faint runes glowing under the surface. It was beautiful, terrifyingly so. Ren-sama, HIME's voice came, her tone steady as always but laced with curiosity. System verification complete. You have been successfully reclassified as a world enemy. Combat parameters have been recalibrated. Your level cap has increased to 120. Shall I begin synchronization with guild database records? Yes, I said quietly. Make sure the logs update correctly. No errors. Understood. Updating guild data. I exhaled slowly, staring out at the glowing chamber. For a moment, I half expected something, or someone, to appear. A developer message, a world event, maybe even a warning. But none came. Instead, the only notification that appeared across the entire player base, those few who still remained in this fading world, was a system announcement written in cold, neutral text. Global system message. Player traveler _R has ascended to the status of world enemy, Sin of Lust. The world enemy event will remain active until system maintenance begins in 60 days. And that was all. 60 days. 2 months before the world ended. That's how long the developers had promised the final update would take before servers shut down permanently. But to me, it wasn't an ending. It was a countdown. The moment the message appeared, a wave of nostalgia hit me. 11 years of exploration, building, fighting, scheming, all flashing before my eyes. Yggdrasil had been my life, my refuge, my world. And now, with everyone gone, I stood at its pinnacle, alone. HIME, I said softly. Status of guild members. All current members remain inactive, she replied. Last login from secondary account, Alvis, occurred 37 days ago. You are the only active operator in the Three Burning Eyes network. I see. The silence stretched. There had been a time when the guild chat buzzed with life, plans for raids, debates over data trades, laughter about crazy builds and broken item combinations. Now, it was empty. Still, it didn't feel lonely. It felt peaceful. I walked through the corridors of Aeternum Sanctum, the portable guild base that had once been a bustling hub of information and strategy. Now it stood as a monument to everything we had achieved. The halls shimmered with golden light, lined with treasures from every world, rare ores, captured flora, crystalline archives of monsters and maps. As I passed the data vault, I paused before the massive repository where all guild information was stored. Millions of entries, locations, item records, NPC data, unconfirmed secrets. All of it still alive. Archive integrity, stable, HIME said, no corruption detected. Shall I maintain full operational capacity? Yes, I replied, keep everything running, even if I'm the only one left. Affirmative. The next few days passed quietly. I didn't receive any challenges or invasion alerts. No messages from other guilds. No player activity logs, save for automated resource resets and NPC maintenance. Yggdrasil was fading faster than anyone had expected. And so, I decided to make the most of what remained. If this was to be the world's twilight, then I would be its last explorer. I began my journey again, from Helheim to Asgard, one world at a time. Everywhere I went, I found silence. Cities abandoned, dungeons unclaimed, fields once filled with adventurers now covered in digital dust. Occasionally, an NPC would greet me, loyal to the end, repeating their programmed lines as if nothing had changed. It was hauntingly beautiful. In those moments, I felt something close to reverence. This wasn't just a game. It was art, a living structure built by thousands of human hands and millions of hours. And now, as the last active player, I had the privilege of seeing it as no one else ever would. Empty, eternal, perfect. By the time 30 days had passed, my level had already risen to 110. Grinding alone as a world enemy wasn't easy, but with the boosts from the Sin Core and the Divine Set, my efficiency bordered on absurd. Monsters that once required raid parties fell in seconds. Entire dungeons cleared themselves through illusions and data manipulation. The combination of data collapse, revision and my new sin-based ability, desire manifestation, made it almost unfair. I could overwrite enemy parameters, reduce their defense, or cause their own skills to malfunction mid-battle. And yet, I didn't feel invincible. Even as I stood stronger than ever, something about the emptiness reminded me that power meant little when no one was left to witness it. Sometimes, I'd open the old guild chat window and type messages anyway. Not for replies, but for memory. Traveler_R found a hidden ruin under Alfheim. Probably part of the early dev builds. Still has debug objects. Traveler_R cleared another dungeon in Niflheim. Loot table bugged, but still beautiful. Traveler_R, still here, everyone. HIME never commented on those messages. She just stood nearby, silent as always, monitoring my health bars and cooldowns. The announcement of Yggdrasil's final update came as a formality. A short message appeared in every player's inbox. Notice: Yggdrasil servers will undergo major update in 30 days. Please back up any private data. Developer support for custom builds will cease after this period. But anyone still here knew what it really meant. There wouldn't be an update. There would only be an ending. I closed the message and looked out across Muspelheim's burning horizon. Volcanoes flared in the distance, painting the sky in waves of molten gold. I guess this is it, I murmured. Ren-sama, HIME said quietly, what is your objective for the remaining days? I smiled faintly. Explore. There's still a lot of the map left. Even if no one's watching, I want to see everything. Acknowledged. Shall I mark unexplored coordinates? Yes. Start from the northern hemisphere. Let's finish what we started. And so began my final expedition. Every day, I logged in, stepped into the fading world, and charted new territories. The deeper I explored, the more I discovered forgotten beauty, dungeons left incomplete, temples that hinted at unfinished storylines, code fragments written by developers who had probably long since moved on. Each discovery felt like unearthing a memory. And each step reminded me why I loved Yggdrasil in the first place. Not for the battles, not for the rewards, but for the mystery, the endless, infinite curiosity that came with walking through a world where everything had meaning, even if no one remembered why. One night, as I stood on a frozen cliff overlooking the void between worlds, I realized something. Even as a world enemy, even as a creature the system itself now categorized as a threat, I didn't feel corrupted or monstrous. I felt free. For the first time, the system didn't bind me to rules or expectations. I could go anywhere, do anything. No guild wars, no tournaments, no objectives. Just the quiet, endless expanse of a dying world, and me, walking its last path. And as the wind blew across the frozen plains of Helheim, carrying data particles that sparkled like snow, I whispered to no one. If this is what being a world enemy means, then maybe I've finally found peace. HIME's voice came softly behind me. Ren-sama, shall I log this as your final journey entry? I smiled. Not yet, we still have 2 months. Let's make them count. The world glowed faintly beneath my feet, alive for just a little longer. And I kept walking, into the digital dawn of Yggdrasil's twilight. End of chapter 38. The Sin of Lust. 1 comment 0 vote. Character info. Face mask general identity data. Name. Traveler_R Ren. Title. The Mirror of Deception. Race. Heteromorph greatest doppelganger. Alignment. Chaotic neutral. Karma. -50. Guild affiliation. 3 burning eyes. Crossed swords class and level. Category class job racial level. Total level. 115. Racial doppelganger 15. Racial greater doppelganger 10. Racial mimic data storage 10. Racial greatest doppelganger 5. Job illusionist 15. Job environment illusionist 10. Job phantom weaver 10. Job data trickster 10. Job data manipulator 5. Job nameless specter 5. Job world enemy sin of lust 20. Bar graph core statistics. Stat value. Pipe dash 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 pipe dash 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 pipe. HP 95. MP 115 plus. Physical attack 40 adaptable. Physical defense 80 adaptable. Agility 90 adaptable. Magic attack 88 adaptable. Magic defense 100 adaptable. Resist 92 adaptable. Special 115 plus adaptable. Guild base, Aeternum Sanctum, image look at here. 0 comments 0 vote. Chapter 39 The Final Countdown. Chapter 39 The Final Countdown. The world was quiet, eerily so. Not the kind of silence that follows battle or rain, but the deep stillness of something that knows it's about to end. The timer at the corner of my vision blinked steadily. Yggdrasil server update. 23 hours 12 minutes remaining. I had been watching it for days now. Each second that passed felt like a heartbeat, one that carried the rhythm of a dying god. For the past month, not a single member of 3 Burning Eyes had logged in. Their icons on the guild roster glowed dim red, all labeled the same way. Last login. Greater than 30 days ago. Even the subchannels were silent. No new messages, no pings, no notifications, just me, and HIME. She walked beside me in her automaton form, a humanoid figure of silver-white alloy, with delicate engravings that shimmered faintly under Helheim's dim light. The dark world of death was colder than ever, a realm of black ice and spectral winds. Her red eyes pulsed softly as she followed, cloak fluttering in the bitter wind. Greater than, Ren-sama, she said, her tone as composed as ever, no new data transmissions have been detected across the guild network. Shall I deactivate external monitoring systems? I shook my head, not yet, keep them on, just in case someone decides to log in at the last minute. Greater than, affirmative. However, statistical probability of member return has dropped to 0.006%. I chuckled, still a chance, huh? Greater than, technically, yes. I smirked and glanced at her. You always were an optimist. Greater than, I am a product of your parameters, Ren-sama, she replied simply. If I am optimistic, it is because you once coded me to be. Her words hung in the cold air, warm in a way no flame could replicate. We walked through Helheim's frozen plains, the black snow crunching under our feet. The world had become empty, no pop monsters, no other players, just the sound of our steps echoing against the void. Even the great abyssal gate, the first layer of Aeternum Sanctum, shimmered faintly in the distance behind us, its portals dimming with each passing hour as system activity wound down. I found myself talking more than usual. Maybe it was to fill the silence. Maybe it was just to remember what it felt like to have company. You know, HIME, this place used to terrify me. Greater than, Helheim. Yeah, back when I was 12, when Yggdrasil first launched, this was the world I avoided the most. Too dark, too empty, too final. Greater than, and yet, it is where you chose to spend your last day, she said gently. Maybe that's fitting, I said, smiling faintly. It's the end, after all. We stopped near a cliff overlooking the dark valley where shadowed glaciers met blackened ruins. The sky above Helheim was split by faint auroras, lines of digital light still trying to render despite the failing servers. Greater than, This world has maintained integrity longer than projected, HIME said, observing the landscape. Even with minimal player input, system stability remains above 87%. That's because the devs built it with love, I said. Not just for money or fame, but because they cared about what they made. Greater than, do you believe that applies to you as well? She asked. I blinked. Me. Greater than, you once said you created this guild because you wanted to see how far curiosity could go. 11 years later, have you reached your limit? I let the wind fill the silence for a while before answering. I think curiosity doesn't end, HIME. It just changes shape. Greater than, so your curiosity will persist, even without this world. Yeah, I said softly. Just, maybe somewhere else. We continued walking. Every so often, I'd spot remnants of my old adventures, collapsed dungeons, frozen fields where I'd once fought raids, and scattered artifacts half buried in ice. They felt like ghost memories, half real, half dream. Then, as we rounded a ridge, the landscape shifted. A vast crater spread below, glowing faintly with blue fire. In the distance stood a structure I hadn't planned to see again. The great tomb of Nazareth. Even from afar, its silhouette was unmistakable, towering spires, the faint shimmer of defensive barriers, and the solemn mausoleum gates that guarded its entrance. I froze for a moment, breath catching in my chest. Greater than, Ren-sama. I smiled faintly. It's been a while since I came here. Greater than, do you wish to proceed? I nodded. Yeah, just to the entrance. It took us nearly 20 minutes to descend the frozen slope. No defenses activated, no NPCs appeared, the air was unnaturally calm, as if the great guild that once resided here had long since gone to sleep. When I reached the edge of the mausoleum, I stopped. The gate was opened slightly, revealing the vast stone chamber within. Rows upon rows of ornate tombs stretched into the shadows, their names carved in ancient runes. But there were no statues. No guardians. No lights. Just silence. I stepped forward, just close enough to feel the weight of it, the presence of something grand, something built with pride and love, now reduced to quiet memory. I guess this is what remains, I said quietly. Greater than, do you regret not joining them when you had the chance? HIME asked. I shook my head. No, Touch Me and his friends built something they believed in. I built something different, but both were meant to last. And maybe, that's enough. The wind howled through the mausoleum's hollow entrance. I turned away, the crimson glow of my aura reflecting faintly off the icy stone. Greater than, Ren-sama, HIME said softly, server shutdown is imminent. Timer indicates less than 1 minute remains. Then let's wait here, I said, lowering myself to sit on a nearby step. It's quiet, peaceful. She nodded and sat beside me, her cloak fluttering lightly in the cold air. The countdown appeared in the corner of my display. 0 hours 0 minutes and 59 seconds. I smiled, leaning back against the icy stone. You know, HIME, when I first started playing this game, I didn't think I'd last more than a month. Greater than, you lasted 11 years. Yeah, guess I got attached. Greater than, I am glad you did. Her voice softened, and I could swear, for a second, it sounded almost human. The timer kept ticking. 0 hours 0 minutes and 32 seconds. Any last systems to shut down? I asked. Greater than, all archives secured. All NPCs in standby. Guild base integrity preserved, awaiting your final command. Then, I paused, smiling faintly. Let's just enjoy the view. Greater than, affirmative. The world shimmered faintly around us. Particles of data began to rise like fireflies, lifting from the ground and drifting into the dark sky. 0 hours 0 minutes and 10 seconds. Thank you, HIME, I whispered. Greater than, always, Ren-sama. 0 hours 0 minutes and 5 seconds. The wind carried the last of Helheim's light into the void. I closed my eyes. Goodbye, Yggdrasil, I said softly. See you on the other side. 0 hours 0 minutes and 1 second. The world froze. Every color faded to white. Then, 0 hours 0 minutes and 0 seconds. And just like that, the world of Yggdrasil ended. End of chapter 39. The final countdown. 0 comments 0 vote. Chapter 40. When the clock refused to stop. Chapter 40. When the clock refused to stop. 0 hours 0 minutes and 0 seconds. The world froze. No motion, no sound, no heartbeat from the system. For one perfect instant, I thought this was it. The end. Then, 0 hours 0 minutes and 1 second. The timer ticked forward. I blinked once, thinking I'd imagined it. 0 hours 0 minutes and 2 seconds. 0 hours 0 minutes and 3 seconds. The numbers continued to move. Slow, steady, certain. HIME, I whispered. No response. The frozen wind began to move again, brushing against my face. It felt wrong, too real. I reached up instinctively and stopped, because the air brushing against my fingers wasn't just visual feedback. It was cold, biting, carrying the faint scent of iron and frost. My heart skipped a beat. Yggdrasil didn't have smell. The full sensory module had been abandoned during the beta years because it was too taxing on the neural servers. And yet, I could smell it. The metallic tang of Helheim's frozen wind. The faint, earthy musk of the tomb's entrance. I drew in a slow, trembling breath. The cold stung my lungs. And that's when panic finally hit me. What the hell? I murmured, voice shaking. Am I dreaming? There was no system lag. No interface flicker. No logout overlay. The Yggdrasil UI, the menus, the chat channels, the health bar, was gone. System call. Menu. I commanded. Nothing. System call. Log out. Nothing again. The silence pressed in heavier than before. Greater than, HIME, I said, louder this time. HIME, status report. For a moment, nothing. Then she moved. The automaton beside me, HIME, slowly raised her head. Her eyes, once glowing in steady red light, now shimmered like living gemstones. For the first time in 11 years, they blinked. Greater than, Ren-sama, she said softly, her voice trembling, not static, not synthetic, but human. Something has changed. I stared, breath caught in my throat. What do you mean, changed? She looked down at her hands, hands that no longer shone with metal gloss but pale skin laced with faint sigil lines that pulsed like veins. Her fingers trembled as she flexed them. Greater than, I can feel, she whispered. The cold, the texture of air, the weight of this place. Is this what it means to have a body? Her tone carried something I'd never heard before, astonishment. Awe, fear. I stepped closer, uncertain whether to reach out or retreat. That's impossible. You're an AI, your code shouldn't even register sensation like that. Greater than, then perhaps I am no longer only code, she said softly, looking at me with eyes that reflected the shifting aurora above. I swallowed hard. The logical part of me, the programmer, the analyst, scrambled to find reason. Glitched neural feedback loop, server migration error. Did the developers somehow succeed in creating full sensory immersion during the so-called update? I forced a laugh, though my chest was tight. Maybe the update really happened. Maybe they finished the full dive sensory interface after all. Smell, touch, breath, all of it. Greater than, yet you sound unconvinced. I'm not sure what to believe anymore. I tried again. System call, contact game master. No response, not even an error message. HIME, can you ping the administrator nodes? Greater than, attempting connection. She paused. Her gaze went distant, as if listening to invisible threads of data. Then she looked back at me and shook her head. Greater than, no response. All communication protocols appear silent. Silent how? Greater than, as if they no longer exist. Dash dash dash. The air grew still again. Only this time, it wasn't digital silence. It was natural, weighty, alive. The soft hum of system code that always underpinned Yggdrasil's world, the faint vibration every player subconsciously felt, was gone. In its place, the sound of wind. Actual wind. And when I tilted my head upward, expecting the pitch-black Helheim sky filled with drifting soul mist, what I saw instead stole my breath. Stars. An endless, glittering ocean of stars stretched across a night sky that shouldn't exist in this world. Helheim's atmosphere was a static void, coded to be eternally shrouded in gray fog. But now, the sky above the mausoleum of Nazarick shimmered with constellations, brighter, deeper, and more vast than any I'd ever seen, even in the real world. I took a step forward, feeling the crunch of frost underfoot, the real, crisp resistance of ice breaking. This couldn't be an update. No dev team could rewrite the entire sensory and environmental architecture in the middle of a server shutdown. No, this felt transferred, as if something had copied Yggdrasil's data and rewritten it elsewhere. Greater than, Ren-sama, HIME said quietly, still staring at her hands, if this is reality, then, what are we? Her words hit harder than I expected. I didn't answer. I couldn't. Instead, I clenched my fists and forced myself to breathe. Focus. Analyze. The game interface was gone. The logout command didn't work. Server contact was dead. The environment had rewritten itself into a version beyond the system's capability. That left only one explanation, absurd as it sounded. The world still existed, but no longer as a game. I needed to test it. If this was reality, or a simulation that somehow felt like reality, then every sense, every rule, could be measured. I lifted my hand and summoned mana the way I'd always done. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the air shimmered. Mana responded, slower, heavier, but alive. Still works, I muttered. At least some systems do. Greater than, Ren-sama, HIME said suddenly, your mana flow pattern has changed. It resonates differently than before. I glanced at her. How different? Greater than, organic, she said softly. Not data streams, not code, more like, blood. That was enough to make my skin crawl. I needed distance. I needed perspective. If I couldn't rely on system displays, I'd have to use what I had, my racial traits and class instincts. All right, I said, taking a steady breath. Time to adapt. Greater than, adapt, yeah, if this world's changed, then I'll change with it. I brought up my racial memory manually, the doppelganger matrix etched into my being. It pulsed faintly, as if waiting. I reached for one of the stored templates, a humanoid form I'd saved years ago. But something in me hesitated. No, if I was going to explore, I needed more than disguise. I needed perspective, vision. I scrolled through the mental library of forms until I found the one that fit best. Avian template, level 100 Birdman, specialized in reconciliation and tracking magic. The transformation surged instantly, light and code folding into muscle and feathers, limbs reshaping, senses flaring open. A rush of wind filled my ears as my body expanded, wings unfurling with the crack of energy. My vision sharpened tenfold. I could see heat signatures, motion trails, and mana residue across the entire horizon. The sensation was overwhelming, but real. Every gust of wind tugged at my feathers, every movement rippled through muscles I'd never truly possessed. I flexed my wings once, twice. They responded like they'd always been mine. All right, I said quietly. If this is still Yggdrasil, it's not the Yggdrasil I knew. Greater than, Ren-sama, HIME said softly, awe in her voice, your transformation feels alive. Then let's find out just how alive it is. I spread my wings and leapt from the cliff. The air roared past me, cold, exhilarating, real. Below, the great tomb of Nazareth loomed silent and eternal, its shadow stretching across the frozen plain. And above me, the stars burned brighter than ever before. I didn't know where I was, or what had happened. Only that the world hadn't ended when it should have. And that, somehow, the story of Yggdrasil, and of me, was far from over. End of chapter 40. When the clock refused to stop. 5 comments 0 vote. Chapter 41 Wings over an unknown sky. Chapter 41 Wings over an unknown sky. The first thing I noticed wasn't the sound. It was the air. The rush of wind sliding beneath my feathers, the sharp bite of pressure pushing against my wings, the faint tremor that ran through every tendon when I beat them once, twice, and rose higher. It wasn't the hollow, pre-rendered wind of Yggdrasil. It was alive, thick, heavy with scent and texture. The sky opened above me, vast and blindingly blue. Not the endless darkness of Helheim's artificial void, nor the aurora-threaded simulation of Yggdrasil's upper realms. This was a sky of pure light, unfiltered and endless, scattered with drifting white clouds that looked close enough to touch. For a long, wordless moment, I forgot everything else. Every wingbeat felt natural, fluid, instinctive. My new body knew how to fly, even if my mind was still catching up. I adjusted my feathers against the wind current and felt resistance shift, the airflow curling along my back like a second heartbeat. When I dove slightly, gravity gripped me. When I angled upward, my muscles burned just enough to remind me that this form wasn't illusion anymore. So this is what it's like, I murmured aloud, voice half lost to the rushing wind. To actually be a birdman. I tilted my wings and soared higher. Below me stretched a land I didn't recognize. And I'd memorized every region of Yggdrasil. There was no mistaking it, this wasn't the world I had known for 11 years. Gone were the floating realms, the magical hex grids, the bordered transitions between world biomes. What sprawled beneath me was something organic, untamed, and impossibly vast. Green forests swayed like waves in the wind. Rivers carved silver ribbons through valleys dotted with lakes. Mountains stretched far into the distance, capped with snow that glittered under sunlight. No loading seams, no visual limits, just horizon upon horizon, alive, breathing, perfect. And above all, no signs of the digital grid that once wrapped every inch of Yggdrasil's environment. "This looks like something from the old world," I whispered. The words came unbidden. The old world, the one from videos and fragments I'd watched growing up. The world before radiation, before domes, before everything turned gray and toxic. A world I'd never seen except through filtered screens. Yet here it was, stretched out before me like the earth that humanity lost centuries ago. I closed my eyes briefly and let the wind carry me, balancing the currents with small adjustments of my wings. My body responded smoothly, like I'd flown all my life. There was rhythm in every movement, a language written in air pressure and instinct. Maybe it was my Birdman physiology. Maybe it was this world's physics. Or maybe I had simply become what I had once only simulated, a creature born to the sky. It felt liberating, not the kind of freedom found in a game. The real kind. The kind that made your chest hurt because it was too vast, too beautiful, too real. For a moment, I almost forgot that I didn't know where I was. But curiosity never sleeps. I banked left and slowed my ascent, hovering with slow wingbeats. Then I focused. The magic of the Birdman template thrummed through me, tracing circuits of mana in perfect, living synchronization with this new reality. I murmured the words to an old detection spell I'd customized in Yggdrasil, layering it with my reconciliation and tracking magic class skills. A circle of faint light expanded beneath me, spreading outward in glowing rings across the land. My vision shifted. Mana outlines appeared across the landscape like tiny motes of starlight, each representing life force or magical density. At first, the map was empty. Then, flashes. Far to the southwest, clustered signals, dense, rhythmic, numerous. A city, not just a settlement, an actual, functioning population center. I expanded the range. Thousands of kilometers of airspace lit up in faint blue lines, and yet only that one region glowed strong. The rest were wild lands, untouched. The spell's results faded after a minute, leaving me with a single certainty. There, I said to myself. Roughly 80 kilometers southwest, large mana cluster, civilization, maybe. If there were people here, humanoids, NPCs, or whatever this world's equivalent of sentient life was, I needed to see them. I needed to know if anyone else from Yggdrasil had come through. A familiar voice entered my mind then, soft, clear, transmitted through message. Greater than, Ren-sama, are you airborne? I smiled. Still am. Altitude around 2,000 meters. You following? Greater than, yes, I am advancing along the ground, southwest bearing, as per your flight path. I estimate I will maintain visual contact within 20 minutes. I glanced down. Sure enough, far below the tree canopy, a faint glimmer moved between shadows, HIME's automaton body, still gleaming faintly under the sunlight as she traversed the terrain. Greater than, you could just ride along, I said through the link. Would save effort. Greater than, you have wings, Ren-sama. I do not, she replied, her tone clipped but amused. However, I must ask, why head toward an unknown population instead of exploring Nazarick while we are near? The question was fair. Nazarick had been the first thing I saw when the world didn't end, a structure I knew intimately by reputation and data. And yet, I want to know where we are first, I said. Coordinates, people, climate, everything. If this isn't Yggdrasil, Nazarick can wait. Exploration without context is suicide. Greater than, a rational choice, she admitted. Then I will proceed by land. I will relay environmental readings if I encounter anomalies. Good. Stay hidden, though, we don't know what counts as normal here. Greater than, understood. The link faded, leaving behind the faint echo of her presence in my mind. The world below shifted as I flew closer to the southwest. The dense forests began to thin, giving way to open plains streaked with rivers. From this altitude, I could see faint patterns, roads, irrigation lines, smoke trails, signs of settlement. And beyond them, something extraordinary. Walls. Massive, high walls of stone, arranged in circular layers, with towers glinting in sunlight. Inside, patches of color, rooftops, gardens, streets, all arranged in a pattern that looked organic, not procedural. A city, and not one built with the same architectural rules as Yggdrasil. No glowing sigils, no floating platforms, just honest, solid construction. I could almost imagine people walking those streets. Looks medieval, I murmured. Human scale, maybe mixed race. Definitely structured. A flicker of movement caught my eye, a flock of actual birds. They darted past, squawking in surprise at my presence, and for once, I didn't feel like I was part of their program. They were real. I couldn't suppress the laugh that slipped out. This is insane. It's too detailed for code, too random for design, so what are you, world? The wind didn't answer, but it pushed me onward. Dash dash dash. As I neared the outskirts, I adjusted my descent. The forests thickened again around the city's perimeter, forming a natural border between civilization and wilderness. Perfect. A good place to rest and prepare. I slowed my flight and circled above a particularly dense cluster of trees. The shadows below were deep, concealing a wide clearing that looked ideal for concealment. Greater than, HIME, I sent through message, I'm landing about 5 kilometers east of the city perimeter. Lots of tree cover, should be safe to open a gate there. Her response came quickly. Greater than, acknowledged. I will rendezvous shortly. I folded my wings and dove, the forest rising fast to meet me. Leaves rushed past in blurs of green, branches slicing the air beside me. I spread my wings at the last moment, breaking hard before landing in a soft gust of wind that sent dust and petals swirling. My feet, actual feet, touched soil that felt cool and damp beneath my talons. For a few seconds, I just stood there, catching my breath, surrounded by the smell of earth and life. Real air, real ground. Every nerve screamed that this was reality, not simulation. And if that was true, then I wasn't a gamer anymore. I was a living being in an unknown world. I exhaled slowly, then reached into my inventory. Or rather, the space where it should have been. The old Yggdrasil interface didn't appear, but something else responded, a faint pulse in my mind. I reached into it instinctively and pulled. A flicker of light burst before me, an item manifesting physically rather than through a window. The small, ornate staff of Aeternum Sanctum. The portable guild base. I smiled. Still works. Greater than, Ren-sama, HIME's voice echoed faintly through message, I am less than 2 kilometers away. Shall I prepare defensive perimeter protocols? Yes, I said, let's open the base here. The staff shimmered as I held it up, faint blue light swirling around its edges. The air warped, and the familiar runes of the Aeternum Sanctum activation ritual began to glow across the clearing. This place would be our anchor. Our refuge, our foothold in this unknown world. Let's see what you've turned into, Yggdrasil, I murmured. Or, whatever you've become. The staff's runes flared brighter, casting long shadows through the forest as the gateway began to form. Dash dash dash. End of chapter 41. Wings over an unknown sky. 0 comments 0 vote. Chapter 42. The Pulse of the Sanctum. Chapter 42. The Pulse of the Sanctum. The faint hum of energy rippled through the air as the final rune flared to life. The Aeternum Sanctum, our guild base, our fortress, our memory, was awakening once more. The clearing trembled softly underfoot. Light spilled upward from the ground, tracing an intricate lattice of golden patterns that stretched across the trees. Then, in a slow, elegant bloom, a structure began to form, its crystalline spires rising from nothing, its metallic roots weaving into the soil like veins of light. Even after years of building it, the sight still made my chest tighten. The staff in my hand pulsed once more before settling into silence. The portable guild base had manifested, and despite everything, despite the end of Yggdrasil, despite the world's shift, it had answered my call. Greater than, Ren-sama, HIME's voice came through message, calm but precise, the area has stabilized. No external disturbances detected within a radius of 2 kilometers. Shall I begin perimeter protocols? Yes, keep it minimal, I replied, eyes scanning the now glowing clearing. Just in case anyone or anything is watching. We don't want attention this early. Greater than, understood, I will establish a silent ward, physical, magical, and visual concealment. Good. A few minutes later, she arrived, emerging from between the trees with measured steps, her automaton form shimmering faintly under the blue light of the sanctum. Her once metallic skin now looked strangely organic in this world's illumination, her silver hair catching glints of sunlight. Greater than, perimeter secured, she said. No immediate threats detected. Perfect, I said, setting the staff upright and stepping back. With one deep breath, I let my body relax, and then change. Feathers faded, flesh and data folded inward. The sleek avian frame collapsed into a shifting silhouette, dissolving like liquid glass. A heartbeat later, my true form stood in its place, white turtleneck, crimson overcoat, and the smile-marked face of the Doppelgänger Illusionist. Even here, in this uncharted reality, the transformation felt seamless. Time to make this place invisible, I murmured. I raised my hands and cast a layered series of illusions, veil of mirrors, shadow light, cognitive warp. Complex sigils spiraled outward, bending perception itself. The forest shimmered once, then calmed. From outside, no one would see anything but trees and sunlight. Even magical detection would slip past it. My illusion web wasn't just visual, it rewrote cognitive data. There, I said quietly. Our little corner of nowhere is now no one's business. Greater than, you never disappoint, Ren-sama, HIME said with a small nod. I smirked. Habit. Can't break it after 11 years. Greater than, then shall we proceed inside? Yes. I reached into my coat pocket and withdrew a small, polished card, black metal laced with silver veins. The guild access sigil. Every guild member once had one, but only mine still pulsed with energy. When I pressed it against the air before me, the space rippled like water. A circular gate shimmered into view, golden, stable, familiar. Home. The moment I stepped through, light engulfed me. And I emerged in the grand chamber of Asgard, the topmost layer of Aeternum Sanctum. It felt exactly as I'd left it. Marble floors gleaming with starlit reflections. Pillars of crystal data climbing into infinity. The faint melody of mana streams whispering through the structure. This was the heart of our creation, the throne level, the core of everything the three burning eyes had built. And it was still alive. I turned in slow circles, taking in the sight. Every detail was intact. The banners depicting our sigil, the archives filled with shimmering data crystals, the sealed door leading to the treasury. My boots echoed softly as I walked toward the central console, a monolithic pillar of transparent crystal where the guild's data was stored. I placed my hand against it. It responded instantly. Light burst from the contact point, flowing up my arm and across the entire room. Lines of code appeared in the air, streaming around me in perfect synchronization. Greater than guild system access. Active member detected, traveler_R. Verification. Complete. Welcome back. For a second, I just stood there. Not because of nostalgia, but because everything was still functioning. The guild's core system was online. All the archives were intact. All data logs, item inventories, NPC parameters, everything had survived the transition. This shouldn't be possible, I whispered. No servers, no login network, yet the system runs independently. Greater than, Ren-sama, HIME said, stepping beside me, her crimson eyes flickering faintly. Permission to interface with the guild database. Granted. Let's confirm our assets. She reached forward and touched the console. Immediately, her eyes widened, an expression rare for her. Light enveloped her as streams of code connected to her form, cascading into geometric patterns that reflected on the walls. The data resonance grew stronger, filling the chamber with a rhythmic hum that sounded almost like a heartbeat. Greater than, synchronization complete, she murmured. System link established. Guild protocols recognize me as sub-core AI, status confirmed. Good, I said, smiling. Then begin system diagnostics. I want to know how deep the integrity goes. Greater than, understood. She closed her eyes. Light pulsed from her body in steady waves as she interfaced directly with the sanctum systems. For several minutes, the air was filled with data threads, streams of light flowing between her and the walls, scanning every corner of the base. Then, she went completely still. The hum of energy subsided into silence. HIME, I asked. No response at first. She opened her eyes slowly. There was something strange in them, uncertainty. Greater than, Ren-sama, she said quietly. Yes. She looked down at her hands again, then at the console, then back to me. Her lips parted slightly, but the words didn't come out immediately. Greater than, I think I understand what changed, she said finally. What do you mean? Greater than, the guild base. She hesitated, gaze unfocused, as if searching for the right phrasing. Greater than, it's not that it's malfunctioning, or even enhanced. It's. Her voice trailed off. I frowned. It's what, HIME? She turned to me slowly, the glow in her eyes flickering between red and gold. Greater than, it's. The words never came. The lights of the sanctum flickered once, casting long shadows across the chamber. And in that charged silence, I felt it too, a faint pulse, deep within the structure, echoing through the walls like a heartbeat. End of chapter 42. The Pulse of the Sanctum. Chapter 43. When Code Took Breath. Chapter 43. When Code Took Breath. The pulse echoed again, steady, rhythmic, alive. It wasn't just energy humming through the walls of Aeternum Sanctum. It was a heartbeat. I turned toward HIME, her face illuminated by the shifting lights of the core console. Her expression was calm, but her eyes glowed with something I had never seen before, something soft. HIME, I said carefully, what do you mean by that? She exhaled slowly, a very human gesture. Greater than, Ren-sama, all the NPCs in this guild base are alive. The words hit like a physical blow. I blinked once. Alive, you mean operational? Greater than, no, she said quietly. I mean alive. She placed her hand on the console again, and the room brightened. Streams of golden light surged outward through the crystalline floor, racing along invisible paths, each one leading downward through the 9 layers of the sanctum. Greater than, every subordinate entity within this structure, each one bound by the creation data we wrote together, has manifested independent consciousness. I stared at her, speechless. That couldn't be right. They were just data constructs, elaborate, yes, even lovingly designed, but still code, built with behavior trees and personality matrices. Unless this world's shift had rewritten more than the environment. Unless everything, every NPC, every parameter, had gained the same impossible spark HIME had. I finally managed to speak. How many? Greater than, all of them, she replied. Every single one, including the minor servants. Every AI-generated construct within Aeternum Sanctum now possesses active awareness. I let out a low breath. That's over 300 sentient entities. Greater than, to be precise, she said, tilting her head slightly, 342. But most are subordinate. The principal representatives have retained their command hierarchies per design. I pinched the bridge of my nose. Okay, let's take this slowly. Are they aware of me? Greater than, yes, HIME said, and there was a faint smile in her tone. They all remember who you are, Ren-sama. Their loyalty parameters remain intact. That made my chest tighten. So they recognize me as the guild master. Greater than, of course. There was no hesitation in her voice. Only certainty. Greater than, I have already sent a synchronization signal, HIME continued. They are converging to the Asgard Hall as we speak. I deemed it appropriate for them to receive instruction directly from you. My head snapped toward her. Wait, you already called them here. Greater than, it was the logical course of action, she said matter-of-factly. Given the scale of this anomaly, all units should be briefed and reorganized. It will also allow you to assess their current states. I sighed, half exasperated, half anxious. At least warn me next time before summoning a small army to my floor. She blinked. Apologies. Should I cancel the transfer? I waved a hand. No, what's done is done. Let's meet them. The light in the hall dimmed, replaced by a slow, resonant chime that vibrated through the structure. Runes flared to life along the marble floor, forming 9 concentric circles, the teleportation sigils of each world layer beneath Asgard. One by one, beams of light erupted from the circles. And they came. From Helheim, the first group emerged, a wave of cold air rolling ahead of them. Leading was Valter Mortis, the Overlord commander of the Abyssal Gate. His black armor shimmered like obsidian mist, the great blade Noctis Fang resting across his shoulder. Behind him floated Thanasis the Pale, a spectral figure cloaked in ethereal white flame, and Sevra, priest of decay, whose skeletal hands clutched a tome bound in chains that whispered in an unknown tongue. They knelt as one. Greater than, by your command, Master Traveler _R, Valter said, voice deep as an echo in a tomb. Helheim stands ready. From Niflheim, came the Frostbound. Blanc, the tempest of shards, drifted forward like a storm-given form, her body composed of shimmering ice fragments. Neve, summoner of endless blizzards, and Ivra of the glacial bloom, their biologist, followed in silent grace, their breath turning the air into drifting snow. Greater than, the frost greets its creator, Blanc murmured, bowing her head. The cold remembers your will. From Muspelheim, heat rolled like a tide. The colossal Ignivar the Crimson Tyrant emerged first, wings of molten flame spreading behind him. The air around him shimmered with lethal heat. Behind him, Golgoros, the lava elemental, and Pyral Ozin, the fire biologist, stood beside Zerdrun, core smith of embers, whose forge hammer radiated divine energy. Greater than, we burn in your name, Lord Traveler, Ignivar rumbled, kneeling despite his immense size. From Vanaheim, life itself seemed to walk in. Lyra and Lune, the twin nature spirits, appeared hand in hand, their translucent hair shimmering in opposing hues of dawn and dusk. Behind them, Orlin, the ancient dryad, radiated a warm golden glow that filled the chamber with the scent of living earth. Greater than, the forests whisper your return, Orlin said softly. We are whole again, thanks to you. From Jotunheim, the floor trembled. Thrimir Ironstorm, the storm giant commander, strode in, armor gleaming with electric arcs. Rinhala Skybreaker followed, her steps shaking the marble, and Voltrian Corebound, the titanic golem, moved with measured precision. Greater than, we hear your call, Master, Thrimir thundered. The skies of Jotunheim await your command. From Alfheim, light and shadow wove together. Seraphel and Velmora, twin archmages of illusion, floated forward with shimmering veils of mana surrounding them. Behind them came Yushane Moonleaf, the dark elf beastkeeper, bowing gracefully with a respectful hand over her chest. Greater than, the veil remembers its master, Seraphel said with a melodic voice. From Nidavellir, the automata marched, precise and perfect. Kor and Ro, the twin smiths, bowed simultaneously, their heavy forms clanging softly. And behind them came Hepha-0s, the divine automaton, towering, ancient, its voice resonant and mechanical. Greater than, primary constructor reporting, it intoned. Systems at 100% operational efficiency. From Midgard, the humanoid representatives. Echo and Mira, the twin doppelganger duelists, reflections of my own racial legacy, stood side by side, followed by Salu and Ethra, the elven artisan whose craftsmanship rivaled gods. Greater than, we live to serve the will that made us, Echo said simply, his voice calm but proud. And finally, from Asgard itself, the attendants. Varen, the demon chef with crimson eyes. Celion, the angelic builder, glowing faintly with holy radiance. Finn, the Phi tailor, Drakkar, the heteromorphic jeweler. Kale, healer of dawn, Reinir, watcher of the hall, Myrrh, the songweaver whose voice was said to calm monsters, and Ethel, the shadow spy whose presence flickered like smoke. They all knelt in synchronized motion, their combined aura shaking the entire floor. And last of all, at my side stood HIME, Reflection, her sub-core interface shimmering faintly, a bridge between them all. The hall was silent. Hundreds of eyes, human, inhuman, spectral, mechanical, all turned to me. Every one of them waited, expected, believed. It was overwhelming. These were creations I'd designed, balanced, written lore for, and in some cases, coded alongside HIME during late nights. Now they stood here, breathing, living, acknowledging me not as their programmer, but as their master. I swallowed hard, forcing words through the lump in my throat. All of you, I said quietly. You remember who you are. Greater than, we do, Valter Mortis said, voice like thunder over still water. We remember our names, our duties, our oaths. Greater than, and our creator, added Orlin softly. The one who gave us purpose when we were only silence. Their words cut deeper than I expected. My hands trembled slightly. They weren't code anymore. They weren't just data constructs. They were people, and every single one of them knelt before me. For a long time, I couldn't say anything. My mouth opened once, twice, but the words refused to come. Finally, I managed a whisper. Rise. The command carried through the hall. Hundreds of beings, angels, demons, golems, spirits, machines, rose as one. The light of Asgard shimmered off their forms, a sea of color and power, unified by one truth. They all looked at me. Not as a player, not as a ghost of a vanished world, but as the master who had built them, and the soul who had returned. For the first time since Yggdrasil had ended, I was speechless. Not because I was afraid, but because, somehow, against all reason, I wasn't alone anymore. End of chapter 43. When code took breath. 0 comments 0 vote. Chapter 44 The Weight of Reverence. Chapter 44 The Weight of Reverence. The echo of their voices still hung in the vast chamber when silence fell again, thick, reverent, absolute. The 9 rings of light beneath our feet dimmed, leaving only the steady pulse of the Aeternum core, the Guild Base's crystalline heart, glowing faintly behind me. I stood before them, hundreds of gazes fixed upon me. Some were glowing orbs within metal visors, others burning coals within skulls, and some, like Orlin's, were soft, bright, human. They were waiting, still kneeling or standing at attention, as if afraid that a single wrong motion would dishonor my presence. I took a slow breath, letting my voice carry through the quiet. Before we continue, I want to ask something simple, I said. All of you, every one of you, what do you think of me as your guild master? It wasn't meant to be a test. It wasn't even a command. I just wanted to know. If they were truly alive, then I needed to hear it, from their own mouths. The first to step forward was Walter Mortis, the Overlord commander of Helheim. His armor scraped the floor as he straightened, eyes of black flame burning beneath the horned helm. Greater than, to us, you are not merely a guild master, he said, voice deep and resonant. You are the one who shaped the abyssal gate, who gave death its law and command. The eternal sovereign whose will forged our purpose. He knelt once more, bowing his head. Greater than, if we are shadows, then you are the light that cast us. A faint shiver ran through me. That kind of devotion, it wasn't what I expected. Then Orlin stepped forward, her golden hair rustling like living leaves. Greater than, my roots remember your touch, she said softly. When this form was but a seed of data, it was your design that granted me growth. For me, you are the great gardener, one who shapes life from the void. She placed a hand over her heart. Greater than, the forests of Vanaheim bloom for you, and for no other. Her words were serene, but the reverence in them made my chest tighten. Then Ignivar, towering and fierce, rose to his full height, flames crackling around his shoulders. Greater than, I was forged in wrath, he said, his voice shaking the marble columns. My existence was a weapon, an inferno given a name, yet it was you, my lord, who tempered that fury, who gave me a reason to burn. He slammed one knee down, the ground sizzling beneath him. Greater than, to me, you are the forger of flame. Command me, and I shall burn the worlds that oppose you. The others followed. Blanc from Niflheim bowed her crystalline form. Greater than, the frost has no master but you. Thrymir Ironstorm thundered his allegiance. Greater than, you are the storm's core. The sky bows before your return. Seraphel of Alfheim smiled faintly, veil shimmering. Greater than, we of the veil live to reflect your brilliance, my lord. Without you, illusion has no meaning. Even HEPHA0S, the mechanical automaton of Nidavellir, lowered its head. Greater than, primary constructor acknowledges source code, REN. The directive remains absolute. Obedience to creator supersedes all protocols. One by one, they spoke. The hall filled with their voices, a chorus of devotion, each one proclaiming loyalty not as a command, but as faith. When the last voice faded, all eyes turned to me again. And for the first time in my life, I didn't know what to say. I stood frozen in the middle of the Asgard hall. Me, Ren, a once isolated boy who spent his youth behind a monitor, was being treated like a god. These weren't simple lines of code following a hierarchy. They believed in me. They felt. The sheer sincerity in their words made my chest ache. I had never been praised like this, not in the real world, not even once. But this wasn't praise, it was worship, and that terrified me. I took another breath, forcing composure. Listen to me, everyone, I began. My voice echoed slightly in the vaulted chamber. I appreciate your loyalty, more than you know. But I don't want blind faith. You don't need to treat me as a god. I'm just. I hesitated. What am I now? Just someone who made you, I finished. If I'm your creator, then that makes me responsible for you. Not your god. Murmurs rippled through the gathered NPCs, confusion, disbelief, even concern. Orlin stepped forward again, brows furrowed gently. Greater than, but you are the one who gave us life. You shaped our souls. What else could you be but divine? Walter Mortis nodded slowly. Greater than, if our purpose is to serve and protect, then we cannot separate your will from our existence. I raised a hand to calm them. I understand what you mean, I said carefully. But listen, there's something I need to tell you all. Something important. Every head turned toward me again. I let the words fall slowly, deliberately. Greater than, this world, is not Yggdrasil anymore. The hall grew silent. Even the low hum of mana seemed to pause. What do you mean? Asked Thrymir, his voice uncertain for the first time. I looked around at their faces, each one showing different shades of confusion. I mean that the place we once knew, the world you were created to exist in, is gone. We've been moved somewhere else. A new world, different, unknown. Greater than, a new world, repeated Velmora, the illusionist. But, my lord, we have always been here. The Asgard Hall has stood for centuries. The roots of Aeternum reach through all realms. Her expression flickered with something I recognized as fear. They remembered time passing, memories that didn't exist before. HIME, I said quietly, do they all remember a history? She nodded faintly. Yes. When consciousness manifested, their memory cores extrapolated plausible continuity. To them, they have always lived here. That made the silence heavier. Reinir, the Asgard Watcher, stepped forward. Greater than, if we are in a new world, then what of the threats beyond these walls? Are we to guard against them as before? I nodded. Exactly. That's what I wanted to talk about. I took a step forward, scanning their faces again. Greater than, whether this world is new or old doesn't matter. Your duty remains the same, to guard this place, to protect Aeternum Sanctum with everything you have. This guild base isn't just a fortress anymore. It's our home. The silence broke, soft murmurs of agreement, quiet determination spreading through the hall. Valter Mortis lowered his head. Greater than, then our path is clear. The walls will hold, the gates will remain sealed until your command. Ignivar slammed a fist against his chest. Greater than, let any who dare approach learn the price of defying our master. Orlin smiled gently, though her eyes shimmered. Greater than, the forests of Vanaheim shall bloom as our shield, and our roots shall strangle any who threaten the sanctum. One by one, they voiced their vows, solemn oaths spoken with conviction that shook the air. And finally, as if to seal it, HIME stepped beside me. Greater than, all systems are now synchronized under current world conditions, she said softly. Defensive protocol. Eternal oath, engaged. A beam of golden light flared across the ceiling, forming the guild emblem of 3 burning eyes. Every NPC raised their right hand to their chest, heads bowed. Greater than, by our lives, our power, and our souls, they said in unison. We serve you, Master Ren of Aeternum Sanctum. The sound rolled through the hall like thunder, shaking the marble and the air itself. And I, standing at the center of it all, could only stare. They were willing to die for me. Every one of them. I wanted to say something, anything, to break that intensity. But my throat refused to move. How could I respond to that kind of faith? To beings who existed only because I once wanted to fill a quiet world with company, and now, would give their lives for me without hesitation. My chest tightened painfully. All I could manage was a whisper. Thank you. The words were small, almost swallowed by the vastness of the hall. But somehow, every one of them smiled. As if that was enough. And as I looked around at the faces of those who called me master, I realized something that shook me deeper than anything before. In this new world, I might not know what was real or fake anymore. But the devotion in their eyes, that was real enough to make me speechless. End of chapter 44. The Weight of Reverence. 0 comments, 0 vote. Chapter 45. The Weight of Thought. Chapter 45. The Weight of Thought. The silence that followed was almost sacred. Dozens of eyes, glowing, gleaming, and alive, remained fixed on me. Each face, each gesture, every breath held as though afraid that even the smallest sound would desecrate the moment. The Hall of Asgard shimmered with divine brilliance, the crest of 3 burning eyes still hovering above us in radiant gold. The light reflected from the polished crystal floors, catching the faint outlines of countless figures standing in perfect formation. It was strange. Even though I had created this place, this sight still didn't feel real. It was overwhelming, beautiful and terrifying in equal measure. And then, my racial ability, the passive instinct of every doppelganger, flickered to life. The ability wasn't something that required activation, it was always there, a subtle hum in the back of my mind. Psychic reflection, the power to perceive surface thoughts, emotional echoes, and even fragments of memory. Originally, it was just a tool for performance, used to perfect mimicry. But now, surrounded by hundreds of awakened minds, that same gift became a flood of voices and visions. Whispers. Fragments. Flashes of devotion. Greater than our Lord returns to us. His gaze alone is proof of our purpose. He breathes, therefore, the sanctum lives. If he asked it, I would gladly fall into the void. Each thought was drenched in reverence, pure, unshaken, almost painful in its intensity. They didn't just obey me. They worshipped me. I staggered slightly under the weight of it all. I hadn't expected to hear their thoughts so clearly, so personally. I'd designed them with loyalty and pride, yes, but this was something else, belief so deep it bordered on divinity. A lesser man might have basked in it, drunk on power. But all I felt was a strange mixture of awe and guilt. These beings existed because I wanted to fill an empty game with life. And now, they loved me as if I were their god. It was too much. My voice broke slightly as I stepped down from the central dais. All need a moment. The assembled NPCs didn't move, but I could sense their confusion ripple through the hall. Their thoughts brushed against mine like waves on a shore, concern, devotion, longing for command. I raised a hand lightly. You've done well, more than I could have hoped. But I need to step outside for a while. I'll be leaving the base for a short expedition. At once, the silence fractured into collective shock. Walter Mortis took a step forward, his armor screeching against the marble. Greater than, my lord, that cannot be permitted. The lands beyond remain uncharted. Unknown dangers may. Ignivar's molten gaze flared. Greater than, allow me to accompany you, my liege. I will burn away any threat before it can draw breath. Blanc's voice was calm but cold. Greater than, or let me freeze the path ahead. You should not expose yourself to unnecessary risk. I lifted both hands to quiet them, but even as I did, I could feel the flood of thoughts intensifying. Greater than he leaves the sanctum. What danger is worth his presence? We must not allow harm to touch him, even if it means our destruction. Enough. The word came out firmer than I intended, and the hall fell silent instantly. I appreciate your concern, I said slowly, but I'm not going to war. I only intend to gather information. We need to know what kind of world this is now. If we're to survive here, we need data, knowledge. They still looked uneasy, but no one spoke. HIME, I called softly. She stepped forward from beside the dais, her silver automaton body gleaming faintly beneath her ethereal cloak. The gentle hum of her core filled the air. Yes, Ren-sama, she said, using that old honorific from her coded days. Even after all this time, hearing her call me Ren-sama still made me uncomfortable. It wasn't the title itself, it was the sincerity behind it. Her tone wasn't artificial, it was reverent, affectionate, human. I'll leave defense management to you, I said. Prioritize stealth and containment. If this new world has any intelligent species or magic, we can't risk detection yet. HIME bowed slightly. Understood, Ren-sama. Shall I implement Defense Protocol 7 and Isolation Barrier Delta? Yes, I nodded. Activate them both. Also, prepare scout units. We'll need long-term data collection once I return. Affirmative. She turned slightly toward the assembled NPCs, already streaming orders into the guild systems through her direct link. Then I turned to the others. I'll take only a minimal escort, 2 attendants at most. This isn't a campaign. I don't want to draw attention. Gasps and protests erupted again. Greater than, my lord, impossible. You cannot face the unknown with so little support. Allow the entire guard to accompany you. I raised a hand, cutting them off. No, this is an order. The air thickened as silence fell once more. Their minds screamed their objections, but none dared voice them. I took a moment to think. Ethel, I said at last. You'll accompany me. Your specialization in shadow and reconnaissance will be useful. You'll be my eyes in the dark. From among the assembled 8 attendants of Asgard, a slender figure stepped forward. Her black uniform shimmered faintly, like liquid ink under starlight. Her expression was unreadable, her tone calm. Greater than, as you command, my lord. I shall remain unseen until needed. Good. I looked back toward the crowd. One more. Someone adaptive, capable of combat if needed, but also skilled at blending in. Before I could decide, HIME's voice cut gently through the air. Ren-sama, may I suggest Echo? I blinked. Echo. HIME nodded. Greater Doppelgänger. Former duelist of Midgard's division. Adaptive to all humanoid templates. Able to conceal presence through multi-layer mimicry. Perfect for reconnaissance in populated regions. I considered that for a moment, then nodded. Approved. Echo, you'll accompany us. From the lower rows of NPCs, a tall, lean figure stepped forward. His form shimmered faintly, skin tone and features subtly shifting, never constant. He bowed low, expression neutral. Greater than, it is an honor, my lord. My blade, and my face, are yours to command. Good. I turned back toward the crowd. The rest of you, remain here. Follow HIME's directives. Keep Aeternum Sanctum invisible and secure. Do not engage unless directly ordered. A chorus of voices replied in perfect unison. Greater than, by your will, our lord. The sheer synchronization of it sent chills down my spine. Before leaving, I took one last look around the hall. Hundreds of eyes followed me, adoring, protective, fanatical in their devotion. Even without using my racial sense, I could feel their thoughts pressing against me, their desire to protect me overwhelming. I wanted to tell them to relax, to just live, but that wasn't something they could understand. To them, protecting me was living. Very well, I murmured at last. I'll return once we've gathered enough information. I raised my hand, opening my inventory. A faint shimmer of blue light enveloped my palm as dozens of data scrolls appeared around me, mercenary summoning scripts, each inscribed with the sigil of the Hanzo units. 30 in total, the perfect number for silent surveillance. I activated the scrolls simultaneously. In a burst of purple mist, 30 shadowy figures appeared, kneeling in unison. Each was clad in layered black robes, faces hidden behind featureless masks, blades sheathed across their backs. The Hanzo moved with quiet precision, no sound, no wasted motion. I gave the order, disperse, infiltrate the nearby city, take positions across key districts. Do not engage, do not reveal yourselves. Report only to Ethel and Echo via secure message link. The Hanzo bowed deeply. Greater than, by your shadow, we move, master. And in the next instant, they vanished, melting into the air, leaving nothing but a faint ripple in the mana around us. Ethel stepped closer, her voice low. Greater than, the city lies only a few kilometers west of our current location. Shall we move immediately? Not yet, I replied, glancing once more toward HIME. Run another systems check first. I want to make sure the sanctum remains stable before we leave. Once we confirm, we'll depart. She bowed again. Understood, Ren-sama. May the sanctum guard your steps. Her voice was soft, but there was something unshakably earnest in it. It wasn't a line of code, it was faith. I exhaled slowly, watching as the hall doors opened before me, revealing the glowing sigils that led upward to the surface world. As I walked toward the light, hundreds of voices whispered behind me, in perfect unison, like a prayer carried on the wind. Greater than, may our Lord's path remain eternal. May his shadow never fall. The weight of their words pressed against my heart. Even with all the power I possessed, it still felt too heavy. And yet, I couldn't show hesitation. Let's go, I murmured to Ethel and Echo. We stepped through the shimmering veil, and the grand hall of Asgard disappeared behind us, its radiant silence replaced by the soft rustle of the forest outside. Above us, the unfamiliar stars burned brighter than any sky I'd seen before. And as I took flight into the cool night air, one thought echoed in my mind. Greater than, if this is truly a new world, then I'll have to protect them, just as they believe I can. End of chapter 45. The Weight of Thought. 0 comments, 0 vote. Chapter 46 Shadows over Yggdrasil. Chapter 46 Shadows over Yggdrasil. The forest wind was quiet when we arrived. Not the eerie kind of quiet, but the stillness that told you were nearing civilization. Smoke from chimneys faint in the distance, the sound of faint bells carried through the air. We stopped atop a ridge overlooking the valley below. And there it was, a vast fortress city, walled in stone and iron, sprawling like a gray crown across the plain. 3 massive rings of walls layered outward from the center, each glittering faintly beneath the moonlight. Torches lined the battlements like fiery veins. I crouched, narrowing my eyes. Greater than, so this is, the city. Echo, crouched beside me, shifted his form slightly, his edges softening into shadow. It's large, my lord. Bigger than any we've surveyed so far. His tone was calm, but even he couldn't hide the curiosity in his voice. Ethel stood silently behind us, her eyes gleaming with a faint crimson glow beneath her hood. The twin daggers strapped to her thighs pulsed softly with mana, like a heartbeat in perfect rhythm with her breath. Greater than, There are guards stationed every 20 meters along the walls, she reported. Rotations occur roughly every 15 minutes. Their patterns are inefficient. I detect no magical barriers, no wards, no traps, not even anti-stealth runes. That confirmed what my racial detection was already telling me. The entire perimeter was clean. No anti-spy wards, no detection enchantments, just plain, human vigilance. How quaint. I closed my eyes briefly, feeling my body shift as I activated the racial morph function. My physical form shimmered, dissolving into liquid black before reforming into a tall, slender silhouette, skin translucent gray, eyes faintly glowing like cold embers. My shadow stretched across the ground, darker than the night around it. The form of a shadow, one of the racial templates stored in my doppelganger data library, a race specialized in stealth and infiltration. The sensation was immediate. The world felt lighter. My body, now weightless and almost incorporeal, moved with a grace that defied physics. The ground no longer resisted my steps, even the air seemed to flow differently against my skin. Echo followed suit. His form melted into a similar figure, though slightly shorter, more angular. His own shadow fused with mine as he tested his movement, vanishing and reappearing like a ripple across dark water. Greater than, efficient transformation, he murmured. This form's sensitivity to light mana is lower than expected. Excellent for espionage. I smirked faintly. Stay close, and don't draw attention. We're here for information, not a massacre. Ethel tilted her head slightly. Understood, my lord. Shall I maintain my human form? I nodded. Yes. Someone needs to pass for a civilian if things go wrong. We made our way down the slope, cloaking ourselves in layered illusion and racial concealment spells. The closer we approached the outer wall, the more apparent it became, this city wasn't ready for entities like us. Two guards leaned lazily against their halberds near the gate, barely glancing at the road. Their armor was mismatched, more ceremonial than functional. Pathetic, Echo whispered, barely audible. I didn't reply. With a flick of my fingers, I triggered silent step, the world muffling around me. My shadow merged with the ground, and we moved, fluid, seamless, invisible. In less than a breath, we reached the base of the wall. From there, Echo used phantom grip to form spectral handholds along the stone. We climbed effortlessly, the city's torches reflecting faintly off our gray skin like water against obsidian. When we reached the top, the guards still hadn't moved. We slipped past them and dropped silently onto the other side. And just like that, we were inside. From the streets below, the city of Yggdrasil unfolded like a medieval tapestry. Stone buildings, timbered roofs, cobblestone roads illuminated by mana lamps. The faint scent of bread and oil filled the air, along with the murmur of late-night chatter from taverns near the outer ring. It was so normal. No artificial shine, no digital haze, no system text floating above anyone's head. It felt like a real city. Greater than, it's alive, Ethel murmured softly, almost to herself. For a moment, I watched her expression, soft, bewildered. She had no idea that, once upon a time, she was nothing more than data in a server. And now, she looked like a real person, breathing, thinking, feeling. I couldn't bring myself to tell her otherwise. We moved deeper into the city, following the flow of the roads. From what we could observe, Yggdrasil was designed for defense, a layered fortress. The outer ring housed the commoners, markets, workshops, and taverns. The middle ring appeared more organized, likely for military and administration. The innermost ring, that was our target. We crossed the outer ring quickly, blending into the narrow alleys and rooftops. At one point, a patrol passed within arm's reach of us, 5 armored soldiers in red and silver tabards, bearing the crest of a lion. Their footsteps echoed through the street, but none of them looked our way. We could have walked right through them, and they wouldn't have noticed. Greater than, security pattern unchanged, Echo whispered through our link. No magical interference detected. Proceeding to the second wall. We reached the second wall in minutes. This one was thicker, patrolled by more guards, but still primitive. No mana signatures, no wards. We scaled it as easily as the first. The inner ring was quieter. The streets here were wide, the buildings larger and cleaner. Lamps glowed with steady light magic instead of flickering flame. The architecture was refined. This was clearly where nobles or officers lived. And beyond that, visible even from a distance, loomed the third wall. Smooth, polished stone reinforced with iron plates. Watchtowers dotted its perimeter. I exhaled slowly. That's the one, the administrative quarter. Getting past the third wall took longer. Guards here were alert, their mana signatures stronger, several of them even carried enchanted weapons. But against an illusionist with access to racial stealth and class-based invisibility layering, alert meant nothing. Echo and I cloaked both ourselves and Ethel in multiple overlapping fields, perfect silence refraction veil, and the passive dark reflection from our shadow forms. We waited for the right moment, when a patrol rounded the far corner, and then scaled the wall in absolute silence. At the top, I scanned for traps again. Nothing, not even a basic detection glyph. It almost felt too easy. We dropped into the courtyard beyond, landing silently behind a low parapet. Ahead of us stood a large stone building, the kind of place that screamed authority. Its walls were lined with glass windows and lanterns, several of which were still lit despite the late hour. The sigil carved above the door depicted a lion and sword, a symbol of the Re-Estais kingdom. Greater than, there, I murmured. Central administration. Ethel nodded. I count 6 guards at the front, 2 on the roof, and a clerk visible through the east window. Echo tilted his head slightly, eyes narrowing. Shall I disable them? Quietly, I said, no deaths. He vanished instantly, his body dissolving into mist. Within seconds, the 2 rooftop guards collapsed soundlessly, their consciousness slipping away like smoke. Then the others, one by one, fell, lulled into a deep, magic-induced slumber. When the last one dropped, I nodded. Move. Inside, the air smelled faintly of parchment and candle wax. Bookshelves lined the walls, scrolls and ledgers stacked in neat rows. The faint sound of scratching quills came from deeper inside. Echo moved ahead first, gliding like liquid shadow between the desks. When we reached the central archive, a lone clerk sat hunched over a pile of documents. He didn't even look up before Echo's gloved hand touched his neck, releasing a soft burst of sleep magic. The man slumped forward silently, his quill snapping in two. I gestured for the others to begin searching. HIME, are you receiving? I whispered through my message link. Her voice echoed faintly in my mind. Greater than, affirmative, Ren-sama. Signal clear. Proceeding with real-time data synchronization. Good. Start recording. We began rifling through the stacks, careful not to disturb the room more than necessary. Most of the documents were written in a common human language, something the translation systems still seemed to support. Echo skimmed a set of maps. 3 concentric walls, as expected. Defensive architecture matches late medieval human design. No indication of advanced technology. Ethel found a stack of papers labeled with military insignias. The guards are organized under a structure called the Royal Army of Re-Estais. They maintain a border garrison with something called the Baharuth Empire. Sounds like rival nations. That caught my attention. Empire, you said. She nodded. Yes, my lord. It appears this city, Yggdrasil, is a border fortress between the Re-Estais kingdom and the Baharuth Empire. Frequent conflicts. Large-scale warfare noted every few years. Echo handed me a map, aged parchment, edges yellowed. At the center, Yggdrasil was marked in bold ink, surrounded by dense forests and plains. To the east, the Baharuth Empire's territory stretched like a scar, while to the west lay the heartlands of Re-Estais. Interesting, I murmured. So this is where we ended up, a world with kingdoms, empires, and war. HIME's voice resonated faintly through the link. Greater than, Ren-sama, that name, Yggdrasil, matches several instances from archived Yggdrasil lore files. However, the current geographic and environmental data does not match any known in-game configuration. This is not the same digital environment. I froze briefly. Meaning, greater than, meaning, this is not Yggdrasil server. It's something else. Her voice faded. I exhaled, staring down at the parchment map in my hands. The lines, the ink, even the texture, it felt real. Too real. If this was a simulation, it was beyond anything Yggdrasil ever allowed. But I pushed the thought aside. For now, I needed information, not existential philosophy. After several more minutes of searching, we compiled what we could. City name, Yggdrasil. Location, a border fortress city belonging to the Kingdom of Re-Estais. Neighboring power, the Baharuth Empire. Political condition, ongoing tension, peace treaties occasionally signed, often broken. Defensive capability, Moderate. Strong walls, average troop discipline. Minimal magic. Magical infrastructure. Low tier. Only minor enchantments in use, no evidence of divine or world tier artifacts. It wasn't much, but it was enough to build a framework. I leaned against the desk, fingers tapping idly against the parchment. So this is the world we're in, I murmured. A world that thinks it's medieval, but with traces of magic. And somehow, it mirrors Yggdrasil's lore, just imperfectly. Ethel glanced up. What should we do now, my lord? I thought for a moment, then smiled faintly. We blend in, we watch, and we learn everything we can about this world, starting with the people who run it. Echo inclined his head. Understood. Shall I establish infiltration points among the local guilds? Not yet, I said. First, we confirm how much of Yggdrasil still exists here. We may not be the only ones who arrived. Ethel nodded. Then our next target is the city's archive deeper in the capital offices, I replied, eyes narrowing. The records of adventurers, nobles, and, if we're lucky, anything related to foreign entities. We moved deeper into the building, past the silent clerk and the rows of sleeping guards, vanishing once more into the darkness. Somewhere in the distance, the city bells began to toll midnight. And for the first time in a long time, I felt the same thrill I had as a 12-year-old boy sitting in his room, uncovering secrets no one else had found. Only now, it wasn't a game anymore. It was the beginning of something far greater. End of chapter 46. Shadows over Yggdrasil. 1 comment 0 vote. Chapter 47 Threads of the Frontier. Chapter 47 Threads of the Frontier. The night was deep and cold, the kind that carried no stars, only the soft gleam of torches and the faint hum of distant magic. Yggdrasil slept, but not peacefully. The silence was heavy, stretched taut over streets that had seen too many soldiers march through them and too many adventurers never return. From the rooftops, the city was a maze of shadows and lights. I moved through them effortlessly, my shadow form blending with the dark. Echo followed a few paces behind, his shape flickering faintly as he shifted between substance and nothingness. Below, Ethel glided along the alleys, her cloak absorbing the faint lamplight like a ripple of ink. We were ghosts in a world that didn't know we existed. Each of us had a different task. Echo infiltrating the outer wards, Ethel shadowing the noble quarters, and me, navigating the veins of the city itself, tracing the lines of its structure, its purpose. And above it all, HIME's voice hummed faintly in the back of my mind. Greater than, link stable, Ren-sama. All data incoming. Good, I whispered under my breath, crouching atop a high bell tower. Let's start mapping this world's information. It began with the walls. From my vantage point, the 3 rings of Yggdrasil stretched like the concentric circuits of an old machine, each built for defense, yet each pulsing with the life of a city that refused to die. The outer districts glowed with lanterns and the soft haze of cooking fires. Even at this hour, traders and guards walked the streets. War or not, life found a way to keep moving. I activated Hawk Vision, one of the detection skills from the Reconciling Seeker build I'd borrowed earlier. At once, lines of faint light appeared across my vision, marking mana signatures, patrol routes, and open zones. Greater than, Echo, status. Western Market Square clear, came his soft reply. Detected multiple merchant caravans preparing for dawn travel. No anti-spy enchantments active. Ethel, the inner walls are reinforced but mundane. Patrols consist of soldiers in standard plate, no magical users among them. I've marked the barracks and noble estates. No extraordinary activity so far. Good, focus on the guild districts next. I want full profiles. Greater than, affirmative, HIME replied. Initiating data sort sequence. I will compile information in real time. We worked through the night. Every alley, every district, every subtle trace of mana that might hint at importance. The Hanzo scattered throughout the city acted as silent lenses, feeding their observations directly to HIME's data archive. Within hours, we had a living map, every key structure, every relevant power, cataloged and categorized. When I finally regrouped with Echo and Ethel in a shadowed courtyard near the central plaza, my head was buzzing with data. I projected the compiled map in a small illusionary display above my hand, a glowing sphere of light threads and glyphs. Ethel looked at it with curiosity. Is that the entire city, my lord? I nodded. Every street and guard rotation within 5 kilometers. But it's more than that. We also have their social structure, trade activity, and civilian networks. I let the illusion expand, showing icons flickering over key locations. Greater than, Yggdrasil, I began, speaking almost to myself as HIME's synchronized data scrolled before my eyes, isn't just a fortress. It's the heart of Yggdrasil's border control. Everything about its layout screams military necessity. HIME's voice confirmed softly. Greater than, correct. Yggdrasil is the main defensive stronghold of the Kingdom of Yggdrasil, designed to repel incursions from the Baharuth Empire. It is both a barrier and a gate, controlling trade, migration, and information flow between the two nations. I crouched and traced a path through the illusionary streets with a finger. The outer wall protects the merchant quarter, where trade thrives despite the tension. The middle ring holds the barracks, noble manors, and administrative centers. In the inner core, that's their military command. Greater than, observation, Echo interjected. Despite being a frontier city, the walls are poorly warded. Even without your illusion magic, infiltration was simple. In this world, I said dryly, they rely on soldiers more than spells. Still, they've survived this long. They must be doing something right. As the night deepened, we expanded our investigation, moving through the quiet streets, visiting locations the Hanzo had flagged as significant. The first stop was near the outer marketplace, a sprawling stone building adorned with a crest of crossed swords and a lion head. Adventurers Guild, Yggdrasil branch. The heavy doors were shut for the night, but through the windows, I could see rows of notice boards, maps, and tables scattered with mission scrolls. A faint enchantment glimmered on the threshold, a simple ward against theft, nothing more. Ethel watched silently from the shadows. So this is where the adventurers gather. Yes, I murmured, the kind of place that thrives on chaos. Missions, contracts, rumors, it's the perfect hub for information. Greater than, Ren-sama, HIME interjected softly. I have identified the guild's leader based on cross-reference data, Ainzok, chairman of the Adventurers Guild, Yggdrasil. A veteran coordinator and strategist. Known for discretion and for maintaining neutrality during military disputes. Neutrality in a border war, I mused. Either a genius, or a fool. Echo chuckled faintly. Perhaps both. Next, we moved to a quieter part of the inner ring, where the architecture shifted from military rigidity to quiet refinement. The faint glow of wards surrounded one particular spire of gray stone topped with runic glass. HIME's voice chimed again. Greater than, Magic Guild identified. Registered leader, Theo Rakeshire, head of the Yggdrasil Magic Guild. A mage of considerable ability and political influence. Ally of Ainzok, reportedly instrumental in magical education and scroll distribution. I could sense it even from the street below, the dense mana flow around the spire, carefully controlled. Not dangerous, but deliberate. They were experimenting here, alchemy, enchantment, maybe even summoning. Greater than, Ren-sama, HIME continued, there are minor magic fluctuations in this guild. It is likely one of the strongest magical points in the city. Mark it, I said. We'll need that data later. Afterward, we visited a narrow alley lined with wooden signs. The scent of herbs and alchemical smoke drifted faintly from one of the doors. Bearer Apothecary, the sign read in a looping script. Inside, through the half-drawn curtains, I glimpsed a cluttered shop, vials, mortar and pestle, scrolls, and glowing herbs. Greater than, owner identified, Lizzie Bearer, HIME whispered. A master apothecary, reputedly the most skilled potion maker in Yggdrasil. Ethel glanced toward the shop. A woman of medicine in a city built for war. An interesting contrast. Every war needs healers, I said softly. The night stretched on. From the adventurer quarters, we moved to the barracks, the merchant lanes, and the noble sectors. The Hanzo relayed constant updates, snippets of conversations, patrol patterns, even snippets of tavern gossip. By dawn, our archive was overflowing. HIME's data voice filled the mental link again. Greater than, compiling summary for Ren-sama. Lines of text and symbols streamed across my vision as she read off the results. Scroll City Overview. Yggdrasil, Re-Estais Kingdom. Role and function. Primary frontier fortress city of the Re-Estais Kingdom. Acts as both military defense and trade hub against the Baharuth Empire. Landscape and position. Surrounded by agricultural plains and sparse forest. Positioned along key trade routes connecting the Western Kingdoms and the Eastern Empire. Military condition. High alert status due to repeated wars. The city hosts multiple garrisons and armories. Majority of soldiers are human, equipped with conventional weapons and limited magic support. Houses society and economy. Population. A balanced mix of civilians, soldiers, and transient adventurers. Civilian life unstable due to constant border tension. Economy. Moderate. Despite war proximity, trade in raw materials, herbs, and magical reagents thrives. Presence of multiple markets and mercantile guilds sustains the local economy. Institutions. Adventurers Guild. Oversees monster hunting, reconnaissance, and escort missions. Magic Guild. Provides arcane education and artifact crafting. Apothecary Network. Led by the Bearer family, specializing in high-grade potions and experimental alchemy. Person standing key individuals. Title name notes. Adventurers Guildmaster Ainzok wise and pragmatic. Maintains stability among adventurers. Magic Guildmaster Theo Rakeshire veteran sorcerer. Focused on magical education. Apothecary Lizzie Bearer master alchemist. Renowned across the city. Adventurers Peter Mock, Luke Rudvolve, Ninja, Dying Woodwonder group known as Swords of Darkness. Posing as Adamantite rank. Adventurer group Crimson Drop Genuine Mithril rank team. Operate widely across the frontier. Adventurer group Blue Rose True Adamantite ranked. Based in capital but frequently interact with Irantel. Military staff local captains and administrators direct representatives of the Re-Estais Crown, oversees city defense. Summary insight. Irantel stands as the fragile spine of the Re-Estais frontier. A city caught between vigilance and exhaustion, where adventurers, magicians, and soldiers coexist under the constant shadow of war. Its people cling to survival not through strength, but through habit. As the final lines of data flowed across my vision, I exhaled slowly. That's quite a picture, I murmured. A city still breathing between two blades. Greater than, indeed, Ren-sama, HIME replied quietly. The geopolitical structure mirrors Yggdrasil's lore data, yet these entities exhibit true autonomy. They are not NPC constructs. I looked across the skyline. Dawn's first light was bleeding into the horizon, painting the rooftops gold. The bells began to toll again, signaling the start of another day. I see, I said at last. Then it's settled. For now, we observe. No interference. We'll act only when necessary. Ethel inclined her head. Understood. Shall I begin establishing safe zones near the outer districts? Yes. Coordinate with Echo and the Hanzo units. Keep contact minimal. No exposure. Greater than, affirmative, Echo murmured, his form already dissolving into mist. As they disappeared into the waking streets, I stood there for a while longer, watching the sun rise over Irantel. The light fell across the city's towers and walls, illuminating its flaws and its beauty alike. In Yggdrasil, places like this had always been static. But here, the wind felt real. The smoke smelled real. The people moved with lives that didn't wait for a player's command. And for the first time since that strange new dawn, I realized something simple, something powerful. Greater than maybe this world doesn't need a god to rewrite it. Maybe it just needs someone who remembers how to observe. I turned, cloak rippling in the wind. Let's start the next phase, I whispered. Archive all of it, HIME. Every word, every map, every breath of this world. Greater than, acknowledged, Ren-sama, she replied softly. Data preservation at 100%. And as the city of Irantel came alive beneath me, I smiled faintly. Because even in a new world, old habits die hard. And I was still Traveler_R, the watcher in the shadows, gathering data the way I always had. End of Chapter 47 Threads of the Frontier. 0 comments 0 vote. Chapter 48 Residual Code and Living Death. Chapter 48 Residual Code and Living Death. The shadows swallowed us whole as we left Irantel behind. The city walls faded into the distance, their torches like dying embers against the horizon. Above us, the sky was heavy with cloud and moonlight, but even the faintest breeze carried the scent of life, grass, smoke, and something foreign. Something that shouldn't exist in a world that was once digital. Echo moved beside me, his form flickering faintly, still in his shadow template. Ethel followed in silence, her movements more fluid than wind, her steps leaving no mark on the ground. We moved quickly, our bodies half ethereal, passing through the forest like smoke through cracks. The Hanzo network remained behind, invisible in the darkness, continuing to harvest data from Irantel. Each one had their assignment: map the guild structure, trace magical currents, and gather any rumor worth recording. I'd learned long ago that even the smallest whisper could be the thread that unraveled an entire mystery. Hanzo report frequency every 3 hours, I murmured. Understood Ren-sama, Echo replied, his tone low and controlled. All units calibrated to return data directly to HIME through the relay anchor. None detected by local guards. Good. The glow of distant mana pulsed faintly ahead, the beacon of Aeternum Sanctum. Even hidden under layers of illusion and null space wards, the portable guild base still radiated an aura of authority. It was a world-class item fortress, my ghost stronghold from the dead game, and somehow, still alive. We passed through the outer illusion field, a shiver of static crawling along my arms as the barrier recognized my guild signature. The world blinked once, and the forest vanished. In its place rose the grand crystalline halls of the sanctum in the Asgard level, lit by the quiet pulse of serene light. I let out a breath. Even in this new world, it felt like home. Echo, Ethel, I said, turning slightly as my form began to shift. The shadow peeled away from my body like smoke dissolving in sunlight, revealing my pale skin, white turtleneck, crimson coat, and that familiar fedora resting lightly on my head. My chain accessories shimmered faintly, whispering like living silver. Echo followed, his body reshaping into his greater doppelganger form, expression unreadable as always. Ethel, however, remained unchanged, her shadow nature constant, her dark figure blending seamlessly into the hall's muted glow. I'll meet with HIME first, I said. You two return to your assigned floors. Stin B. Both of them bowed. Understood, my lord, Ethel said softly, her tone edged with calm obedience. Acknowledged, Echo added, his silver eyes glinting faintly. May the shadows remain with you. I gave a small nod. As they vanished into their respective teleport gates, I stood alone in the corridor, the exotic floor beneath my feet, holographic light dancing along the walls like veins of energy. The silence here wasn't empty, it filled with the quiet hum of countless systems running perfectly. And somewhere deep within that digital pulse waited HIME. When I entered the central hall, she was already there, standing beside the projection dais, her automaton body gleaming like moonlight on glass. Her long silver hair flowed down her back, and her eyes, artificial but gentle, glowed faintly blue. She bowed when she saw me. Welcome back, Ren-sama. Her voice, soft and composed. You've returned with significant data acquisition, Ren-sama. I smiled faintly. As always. HIME, record summary log under operation, Erantel. Priority tier alpha. Already done, she replied with a faint smirk, an imitation of my old sarcasm that she must have learned from years of observation. Congratulations, Ren-sama. You've gathered the most extensive urban and geopolitical data since our arrival in this world. I'll take that as a compliment. But before I could continue, she tilted her head slightly, the glow in her eyes shifting. However, I also have updates to deliver regarding internal guild performance. Shall I proceed? I nodded. Go ahead. HIME moved her hand, and a holographic projection materialized above the dais, a shifting sphere of blue and gold light, filled with icons representing the 9 realms of Aeternum Sanctum. Each pulsed faintly in rhythm, signifying that the systems were still stable. While you were outside, I ordered each floor guardian and their assistants to conduct operational diagnostics. The objective was to determine whether their abilities remain functional in this environment. I frowned slightly. Functional? You mean, if they can still use their skills? Exactly. The projection expanded, focusing on the lowest layer, Helheim, the abyssal gate. It glowed faintly black-blue, pulsing like a heartbeat. Walter Mortis and Severa, under my instruction, conducted several controlled tests on necromantic systems. They confirmed that summoning protocols, curses, and mana manipulation all function identically to Yggdrasil's system, no degradation or data corruption detected. I folded my arms. So, they still retain everything. Yes, HIME replied, but that's not all. The projection flickered again, and now an image of a skeletal army appeared, dozens of undead marching in perfect formation, their eyes burning blue. They experimented using both standard mana-based summoning and material catalyst summoning, what in Yggdrasil terms would be referred to as corpse-assisted necromancy. Corpse-assisted? I raised a brow. That's not even allowed in most Yggdrasil systems. Indeed, HIME said, but here, the results were unexpected. When they used actual physical corpses, taken from pop monsters harvested from the lower layers, the summoned undead did not dissipate after their usual time limit. I blinked. Wait, they persisted. Yes, indefinitely, as of now. The projection zoomed in on one of the undead, a towering dark knight, its armor glinting under eerie light. This specimen was summoned nearly 3 hours ago using a monster level 20 corpse as a catalyst. It has not vanished, degraded, or shown signs of mana depletion. It responds to commands normally, and exhibits sustained stability far beyond any Yggdrasil model. I stared at the image, fascinated. So the summoning isn't just code anymore. It's binding actual matter. Precisely, HIME said. They hypothesized that the undead now function as hybrid entities, constructed from residual mana and tangible biological matter. Their existence now relies on environmental mana flow rather than system timers. I stopped myself mid-sentence. That's absurd, but also brilliant. HIME's lips curved faintly. You always did enjoy bending systems, Ren-sama. I chuckled softly. True, but this goes beyond a bend, it's like cheating with the rules of the world itself. The projection shifted again, displaying reports from the other floors. Niflheim's elemental biologists confirmed that frost flora still grew under controlled mana, though at slightly slower rates. Muspelheim's demon engineers reported stable thermal energy production. Vanaheim's dryads succeeded in regrowing alchemical plants even without mana infusion. Nidavelir's automatons tried to make low-level audinatons with no reliance on system scripts. In short, everything still worked. Just differently. All functions remain operational, HIME summarized. However, environmental factors now appear to influence ability performance. This world provides its own mana and physical substrate. The line between digital construct and physical existence no longer applies. So, I leaned against the dais. We're no longer bound by Yggdrasil's mechanics. We're inside a system that behaves like a world, with all the freedom and danger that implies. Affirmative. There was a brief pause before she added, her voice softer. I have also confirmed emotional and cognitive stability among all NPCs. They are adapting well to their new circumstances. Most have begun to act independently, researching, experimenting, and improving their own methods, as instructed. That made me smile faintly. They're learning. Yes, Ren-sama, your creations are no longer static. They're growing. I took a slow breath, letting the enormity of it sink in. The Aeternum Sanctum wasn't just surviving, it was evolving. The NPCs I'd written, the AI routines HIME had optimized, they weren't obeying simple lines of code anymore. They were acting on instinct, adapting to a living world. It was equal parts exhilarating and terrifying. I want every floor to continue their experiments, I said finally. Not just summoning, everything, alchemy, forging, magic, biological synthesis, illusion. I want to know how far the limits have changed. HIME inclined her head. Already done, Ren-sama. Orders have been distributed. Each division will continue testing and report directly to Central Command. The first consolidated results should be available within 72 hours. Good. I hesitated a moment, then added quietly, and tell Walter Mortis and Severa to continue observing their undead. I want daily reports on their stability. If they truly last indefinitely, we'll need to rethink how we define death in this world. Understood, HIME replied, her tone thoughtful. They will be pleased to hear of your personal interest. Let's just say I'm curious, I said with a small grin. If necromancy itself can evolve, then everything else can too. The projection dimmed, fading into soft blue light once more. The hall was quiet again, filled only with the hum of distant energy flows. I looked up toward the crystalline ceiling, where the exotic shine shimmered faintly, replicas of a sky that didn't belong to Yggdrasil anymore. I folded my arms, watching the light play across her metallic features. We came here expecting rules, logic, systems. But this place, it doesn't care about that. It's rewriting itself, and we're just trying to understand what it's becoming. HIME tilted her head, her eyes glowing brighter for a moment. If that is true, then you, too, are part of its rewriting. Your curiosity is a constant, Ren-sama. Perhaps the world responds to that. I laughed softly under my breath. Maybe, or maybe I'm just doing what I've always done, looking for patterns that aren't there. Either way, she said gently, you're still learning. And so are we. I looked at her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Then let's keep learning. As I turned to leave the hall, HIME's voice followed me, calm and certain. Ren-sama, would you like me to inform the guardians of your directive personally? Yes, I said without turning. Tell them, the world has changed. And so must we. The doors of the central hall closed behind me with a soft hum. For the first time in years, I felt that same thrill I'd known when I first logged into Yggdrasil as a child, the same spark of curiosity, now reborn in a world that might never have limits again. End of Chapter 48. Residual Code and Living Death. 0 comments 0 vote. Chapter 49. Wanderer of the Shining Realm. Chapter 49. Wanderer of the Shining Realm. Perfect silence, I thought, exhaling softly as I started walking through the marble corridor. My boots clicked lightly against the floor, the sound oddly grounding. This was our Asgard, the crown of Aeternum Sanctum. The realm I had built with my own idea, and HIME's endless patience. And right now, it looked more breathtaking than ever. The air shimmered faintly, filled with a soft golden radiance that didn't come from any lamp or magic source. It was ambient, like the place itself emitted divinity. Every wall reflected the light in rippling hues, white, gold, and a faint trace of blue, like sunlight caught in crystal water. When I'd designed this place, the theme had been simple: pinnacle of light. A symbol of immortality, purity, and perfection. Back then, it was just for aesthetic purposes, high-tier visual flair for the ultimate guild control room. But now it felt real, as if the code that once made it had grown skin, breath, and soul. I stepped into the main promenade, where the floor stretched for hundreds of meters, flanked by floating archways that spiraled upward into infinity. Outside the transparent walls, the view of the floating island glimmered, clouds rolling beneath, sunlight filtering through. Asgard wasn't just a hall. It was a continent of light suspended in the sky. Below lay nothing but endless clouds. Above, radiance eternal. If there was ever a place that felt like a god's throne, this was it. And I had built it with too much free time and caffeine. Honestly, what kind of lunatic makes an entire floating citadel just for a guild UI hub? Oh right, me. I passed beneath a grand archway, entering one of the side corridors. My eyes swept over familiar places, rooms I hadn't visited in years. To my left, the treasury gate, sealed with a radiant lock of divine energy, humming softly in recognition of my presence. That door alone represented more wealth than a divine class item. Inside, enough gold to bury a god, in jewel and pearl. Literally quadrillions of Yggdrasil gold pieces, stacked in shimmering layers, reflecting across miles of ornate chambers. The treasure room also held our crown jewels, 11 world-class items. Some of them we'd bled for, like Aeternum Sanctum. Others, we'd found by pure accident during exploration. And, in true Three Burning Eyes fashion, some had probably been acquired through morally flexible trading. Still counts as found treasure if the other guy doesn't notice, right? Among them, I remembered the voodoo effigy, capable of redirecting damage to another. The olive branch, capable of growing life anywhere. The mirror of reversal, the one I'd used to become lust. And so on, all safely in innermost inside. I smiled faintly. Yeah, still the best loot collection in the history of Yggdrasil. Next came the Library of Infinite Scrolls and Tomes, another masterpiece of HIME's organization mania. Shelves stretched endlessly into the horizon, each stacked with glowing tomes, scrolls, and crystal tablets. Millions of items, spells, research notes, ancient scripts, all neatly catalogued. The faint hum of enchantments made the air vibrate softly, like the whisper of turning pages. If I had a gold coin for every hour HIME spent rearranging these by historical aesthetic alignment, I'd have, well, still a quadrillion gold coins, but you get the idea. Somewhere in there was the scroll I once used to crash an entire dungeon. A good memory, a terrifyingly expensive one, but still a good memory. I took a turn down the western passage, leading toward the attendants' quarters. I didn't plan to visit directly. I could already imagine the chaos if they suddenly realized I was inspecting them, but I still wanted to picture each of them in their workspaces. After all, I'd designed those rooms myself. Varen the demon chef. His kitchen was practically an armory. Cauldrons forged from abyssal steel, ovens enchanted with hellfire, and knives so sharp they could probably cut data itself. The smell that came from there was always suspiciously pleasant, half heavenly, half deadly. Every dish had buffs and poison hidden in perfect balance. Last time I'd tried one of his specials, I'd temporarily gained +3 agility and a mild existential crisis. Celian the angelic builder. His workshop was a cathedral of marble and blueprints. Golden feathers always drifted through the air, and constructs shaped like cherubs carried stone slabs twice their size. He could rebuild anything, from a simple cathedral to a super-mega fortress. He was the reason Aeternum Sanctum could survive any invasion. Maybe he can rebuild half the guild hall even after our old member accidentally detonated his forge. Finn the Phi Taylor, a pink-haired menace with scissors sharper than pride and a personality twice as terrifying as her smile. Her atelier glowed with silk threads that floated through the air like strands of starlight. Every piece she made was enchanted: stealth armor, phantom robes, illusory mantles. And maybe if she customized my outfit, I couldn't sit down for an hour because the pants kept phasing through furniture. Drakkar the heteromorphic jeweler, a stoic lizard-like craftsman who treated gems like living beings. His forge glowed with molten crystal, where he forged soul-bound artifacts, items that literally fused with the wielder's essence. Half his creations looked cursed, the other half were cursed. But his work, flawless. Kale the healer of dawn. His chamber was the calmest place in Asgard, sunlight filtering through glass walls, flowers growing even without soil. He radiated holiness so pure it made undead NPCs in their max level physically uncomfortable to stand near him. I can test poison resistance potions near his room just to annoy him. Rainier the Watcher. His domain was a strange one, filled with floating gears, crystal clocks, and stars that moved like living things. The time chamber of Asgard. He could manipulate the local time ratio of Aeternum Sanctum, even pause or accelerate weather systems. He can made it rain inside Muspelheim for balance. Maybe. Myr the Songweaver. Her music filled the guild base constantly, a resonance that stabilized mana flow through every floor. Her harp wasn't wood, it was data itself, a living conduit that tuned the guild's systems. Without her songs, half the Sanctum's enchantments would probably implode. Her concerts were chaotic. She can sang in 7 different magic languages at once and caused a dimensional echo in Alfheim. And then there was Ethel the Shadow Spy. Her quarters were the one place in Asgard that wasn't bright. It was quiet, black, and infinite, a room that seemed to fold in on itself. Her very presence was enough to bend data space, and now, here in this new world, that ability likely surpassed even mine. I smiled faintly. "She'll love this world," I muttered. So many secrets to eat. After a while, I found myself standing on the outer balcony of this citadel. The wind rushed past, carrying faint motes of gold light that sparkled against the horizon. Beneath me, the massive floating island glowed from within, like sunlight trapped in crystal veins. I leaned against the railing, looking out at the world. For the first time in what felt like forever, I let myself just breathe. Everything we had built, every code, every hour, every experiment, it was still here. But now it was alive. Asgard wasn't just a digital fortress anymore. It was beautiful. I closed my eyes for a moment. All around me, life pulsed in rhythm with something greater, something organic. Maybe this was what I needed. To walk, to remember, to see the world we'd created, now reborn. For a long time, I just stood there, letting the light wash over me. Whatever this world had become, whatever new rules it played by, Aeternum Sanctum must be ready. My people must be ready. And so must I. End of Chapter 49. Wanderer of the Shining Realm. 0 comments 0 vote. Chapter 50. The Home Beneath the Sky. Chapter 50. The Home Beneath the Sky. Walking through Asgard gave me a strange feeling, like stepping into my own dream. The kind that never fades, never glitches, never ends. The air shimmered faintly with light, though there was no sun here, no source of radiance. Just illumination born from the island itself, pure, weightless, perfect. There was no sound except the soft hum of mana flowing through the floating structures, and the faint echo of Myr's eternal song, weaving through the halls like a lullaby made of light. Asgard wasn't large, not in the conventional sense. It was a floating island suspended above nothingness, a continent of marble and gold barely the size of a city, and yet, it felt infinite. There were no forests, no mountains, no rivers or lakes. Just one vast, towering citadel that dominated everything. The heart, soul, and body of Aeternum Sanctum. And right now, it was mine, all of it. I walked past the crystalline walls, my reflection splitting across their mirrored surfaces a dozen times over. My pale doppelganger form grinned faintly back at me in every direction. Everywhere I looked, there were traces of the guild's past. The banners still fluttered softly along the upper halls, marked with the sigil of the 3 burning eyes. Now, I looked at them and saw something else. Home. I wandered through the open courtyard, an enormous, circular expanse paved with white gold stone, surrounded by arching columns that reached so high they vanished into the light. This was the heart of Asgard. From here, I could see everything: the hall spires, the throne chamber, the floating terraces of the attendant quarters, even the long, curved balcony where I used to sit and review raid logs while pretending to be productive. The wind brushed against me, cool, clean, gentle. It wasn't simulated anymore. It wasn't just lines of code pretending to be nature. This was air. I spread my fingers and let the breeze pass through them, closing my eyes for a moment. In Yggdrasil, this was just a game. Now, it was reality. And somehow, that realization didn't scare me anymore. When I finally made my way back to the central hall, HIME was already waiting, as if she'd known I would return. She stood beside the projection dais, hands folded neatly in front of her, silver hair cascading like moonlight down her shoulders. Her eyes glowed faintly, blue like data streams, but softer now, alive. She bowed slightly as I entered. "Welcome back, Ren-sama." I chuckled quietly. "You really don't need to greet me like that every single time, you know. Protocol and courtesy are different things," she said, smiling faintly. "And I find courtesy pleasant." I raised an eyebrow. "Since when does an AI enjoy manners?" "Since you gave me permission to develop personal preferences." "Touché." I walked closer, standing beside the dais. The entire floor rippled with faint light, displaying a map of Asgard, glowing lines representing the flow of energy between each system. Everything was stable, perfect. "I've been walking around," I said finally. "This place, it's more beautiful than I remember." "That would be because it's no longer bound by Yggdrasil's rendering limits," HIME replied. "The sanctum adapts to environmental mana now. The light, the resonance, even the architecture, it's constantly rewriting itself to be more natural." "Natural, huh," I muttered, glancing up at the ceiling where threads of luminous code twined like constellations. "You mean it's alive?" "In a sense, yes." We stood in silence for a moment. Then, without really thinking about it, I said the words that had been forming in my mind for a while. "HIME, I've made up my mind." She turned toward me, expression still but curious. "About what, Ren-sama?" I looked around, at the hall we'd built, the light that shimmered across the marble, the faint hum of systems that had somehow become real. "This world," I said quietly. "Whatever it is, game, dream, reality, it doesn't matter anymore. I'm done trying to figure it out. I've decided to accept it." Her eyes softened. "I've spent half my life running away from things I couldn't change. The real world was toxic, literally and figuratively. My old home's gone, the air poisoned, the land dead. But here," I gestured around us. "Here, the air still moves. The sky still shines. The people, my people, live." I smiled faintly, almost laughing at myself. If that's not real enough, I don't know what is. HIME tilted her head slightly, watching me in silence. Then she spoke softly. "So you've chosen to call this world home?" "Yeah," I said. "This world, this aeternum sanctum, is my home now." For a long time, there was no sound except the gentle hum of the sanctum's heartbeat. I could almost hear the memories of my past world in that silence, the echo of sirens, the static hum of filtered air inside sterile domes, the endless noise of dying machines. I remembered standing behind glass, watching a gray sky that never moved. That world was broken, I thought. Destroyed by greed, ignorance, war. I wasn't going to let that happen again. Not here. HIME's voice broke through my thoughts, calm but curious. "Then, Ren-sama, what do we do now?" I blinked and looked at her. "What do you mean?" "Now that you've accepted this as home," she said, "what will be our purpose? What path shall we take in this new world?" I smiled faintly. She always did have perfect timing with the existential questions. "Well," I rubbed my chin, pretending to think. "We could always do what we're good at." "Data collection?" she asked, her tone tilting upward slightly, like she already knew the answer. "Exactly." I grinned. "Information has always been our weapon, hasn't it?" The three burning eyes were built on one principle: to know everything, before anyone else does. To understand the world, HIME finished for me. "Right, but this time, we're not just collecting information for profit or fun. This time, we'll collect it to protect this world." She blinked once, the light in her eyes brightening. "Protect it?" I nodded. "Yeah, if this place really is alive, if it's real, then it's bound to face threats. Maybe monsters, maybe empires, maybe the same kind of stupidity that destroyed the world I came from. My voice hardened slightly, and I won't let that happen again. HIME looked at me, silent for a moment, then bowed deeply, not the robotic kind of bow, but the graceful, human one. Then our mission remains unchanged, Ren-sama. To seek, to record, and to preserve. Knowledge is our blade, curiosity is our compass. I couldn't help but smile at that. That's my line, you know. I learned from the best. I laughed quietly. I turned back toward the window, watching the faint glimmer of the floating island beyond the walls. The clouds swirled gently around Asgard's base, shimmering gold in the eternal light. This was my world now. A perfect, fragile world suspended in an endless sky. And if it ever faced ruin, if chaos or war tried to touch it, I would be there. Not as a savior, not as a god, just as Ren, the wandering doppelganger who couldn't stop asking questions. Because information was more than power. It was protection. And as long as the three burning eyes still existed, no disaster would ever catch this world unprepared. I looked at HIME one last time, her calm smile reflected in the golden light. Let's begin again, I said softly. From zero. Understood, Ren-sama, she replied, voice steady but warm. I'll assemble the guild network immediately. Our next archive will be the world itself. The floor beneath us pulsed once, alive with light, the first heartbeat of a new era for the guild. I smiled. Perfect. Everything's set. End of Chapter 50. The Home Beneath the Sky. 1 comments 0 vote. Chapter 51. The Game of Kings and Pawns. Chapter 51. The Game of Kings and Pawns. It was late night outside. Asgard's sky still glowed with its perpetual daylight, a halo of gold and white that never dimmed. The concept of night didn't exist here, only cycles of mana pulsation that HIME liked to call circadian code. In other words, light was eternal, time was meaningless, and I was definitely running on my third imaginary coffee of the day. I was sitting on the balcony of the central hall, overlooking the floating expanse of clouds below, when HIME's voice broke through the silence. Ren-sama. There it was. That tone. Calm, elegant, and just slightly heavier than usual. I have something important you should probably listen to before you accidentally trigger a world event voice. I leaned back in my chair. You sound serious, HIME. What is it this time? Please tell me Ignivar didn't start super explosion fire experiment inside Muspelheim. No, Ren-sama, she said smoothly. The problem is external. We have received a new report from the Hanzo network in Yggdrasil. Ah, that kind of serious. I turned slightly toward her projection, where a soft blue holographic image flickered above her palm. Report away, then. According to multiple sightings, HIME began, one of the key figures within the kingdom of Re-Estais, the warrior captain, known as Gazef Stranov, has departed from the royal capital under direct royal command. He is currently traveling toward the outskirts surrounding Yggdrasil with a specialized unit of soldiers. I frowned. Gazef Stranov, that's a name I've seen mentioned in the administrative records, right? The Royal Army's golden boy. Basically the human version of a raid boss with plot armor. That description is accurate within 92% probability, HIME replied after a brief pause that sounded suspiciously like suppressed amusement. Flattery from my AI. I must be doing something right. The order given to him, she continued, ignoring the jab, was to investigate and neutralize a series of village assaults occurring near the border. Witness accounts suggest the attackers may belong to the slain theocracy, though no official declaration of hostility has been made. I blinked, tilting my head. Wait, hold on, the theocracy, that's one of the major religious nations, right? The one that supposedly hates anything non-human. Correct. The slain theocracy has historically maintained an antagonistic stance toward demi-humans and heteromorphic entities. I rubbed my chin thoughtfully. Then this should be a big deal. Why send just Gazef and a few soldiers? Why not mobilize the local garrison at Yggdrasil? That's the logical move for a border incursion. That, HIME said softly, is what makes this incident peculiar. The projection on her hand changed, a miniature map of the region materialized, glowing lines showing troop positions and patrol routes. She pointed to a cluster of red marks at the city's northern periphery. If this were a true military threat, Yggdrasil's regional forces would have sufficed. Instead, they pulled a national asset from the capital to deal with it. Moreover, intelligence reports from Yggdrasil show no pattern of aggression from the theocracy's side. No troop buildup, no reconnaissance, no pre-war tension indicators. So it's a trap, I said bluntly. Most likely, HIME agreed. Someone within the Re-Estais kingdom itself may have orchestrated this. The pattern suggests an internal political maneuver rather than foreign aggression. I whistled softly. Politics. Of course. Nothing's ever simple. She folded her arms, looking faintly troubled for an AI. Gazef Stranov is considered a national hero. Eliminating him would destabilize both the army's morale and the royal family's legitimacy. So, I said slowly, someone wants to cripple the kingdom's military strength from the inside. Precisely. I exhaled, running a hand through my hair. Even in another world, humanity can't go 5 minutes without stabbing itself in the back. I stood and began to pace, the hem of my crimson coat brushing against the polished marble. This makes no sense strategically, I muttered. Gazef's the kind of person you deploy when an entire kingdom's on fire, not when a few villages are in trouble. So either the king's being manipulated, or the king himself is compromised, HIME finished softly. I glanced at her, narrowing my eyes. You suspect this could be a setup at the royal level? Merely hypothesizing, she replied calmly. But the data suggests layers of misdirection. The order is real, the villages are real, but the timing is convenient. Too convenient. I couldn't help but smirk. You always did have a talent for conspiracy theory. It is not paranoia if the probabilities exceed 70%. Touché, again. I stopped at the edge of the balcony, looking out over the radiant expanse of Asgard's horizon. Below the floating citadel, the world stretched endlessly, fields, clouds, and lands I still didn't fully understand. Somewhere out there, men were marching to their deaths, and they didn't even know who was pulling the strings. It was the same story everywhere, wasn't it? HIME, I said quietly, do you know what the funny thing is about humans? Humor is subjective, Ren-sama. I gave her a flat look. I mean in general, even in my old world, people loved destroying what they didn't understand. If they saw power, they feared it. If they saw peace, they broke it. That's the pattern. Doesn't matter if it's a nuclear wasteland or a medieval kingdom. Same bugs, different software. So you believe this is inevitable? No, I said, shaking my head slowly. Just predictable. I smiled faintly. That's why we exist, right? The three burning eyes. We don't pick sides. We just watch, record, and prepare. You intend to continue as an information guild. Exactly. I turned back toward her, hands tucked into my pockets. We'll do what we've always done best, observe, analyze, and archive everything. If there's a threat to this world, we'll find it before anyone else does. HIME bowed her head slightly. A familiar mission, then. One that suits us well. Yeah, I said softly. Information is the purest defense. Knowledge can stop wars before they start, or at least make sure we're not the ones buried under the rubble. Then our next phase begins, she said. I'll assign Echo and Ethel to begin deeper infiltration. We'll map every major political and military entity across this continent. Good. Start with Re-Estais, Baharuth, and the Theocracy. I want every piece of data you can find, names, ranks, alliances, potential motives. Understood. However, her voice hesitated, rare for HIME. Ren-sama, what about magical threats? We have yet to determine whether super-tier magic functions here as it did in Yggdrasil. I nodded slowly. Yeah, that's been bothering me too. Super-tier spells were beyond even divine class capabilities. In Yggdrasil, they were catastrophic but contained, a system-defined event. Here, though, we didn't know the rules. If the effects are permanent, I murmured, then one misused spell could level entire continents. That kind of power doesn't belong in a living world. Should we test it? I smiled faintly. Not yet. I'd rather avoid accidentally deleting half the atmosphere before breakfast. A prudent decision, Ren-sama. I rested both hands on the balcony railing, looking down at the endless expanse of clouds. You know, I said quietly, there's another thing that bothers me. Gazef. If he's really one of the strongest humans here, I need to know how strong. According to records and battlefield accounts, he has been described as unmatched within the kingdom. However, we lack numeric calibration to estimate his level accurately. Right, I murmured. For all we know, he could be level 40, or level 100. And if he's the latter, then we're sitting on a ticking bomb. Your concern is logical, HIME said. If individuals of such strength exist without constraint, the world's balance could be volatile. Exactly. I glanced up at the glowing mana streams crossing the sky. If someone like that ever decides to fight using world-breaking magic, or worse, if they're manipulated into it, this world could share the same fate as mine. HIME looked at me, her expression unreadable, and then spoke softly. Then it is our responsibility to ensure it does not. I smiled faintly, the expression half weary, half amused. Responsibility, huh, that's a big word for someone who started life as a data assistant. I learned it from you, Ren-sama. That one hit deeper than expected. I turned away before she could see the small, tired grin that tugged at my mouth. Yeah, I said finally. Maybe you did. The wind shifted again, carrying faint traces of Mur's song from the lower halls, peaceful, steady, endless. Somewhere out there, soldiers marched. Plots brewed. And maybe, just maybe, the world had already started its next chapter. I straightened, adjusting my crimson overcoat. All right, HIME, I said, tone returning to its usual calm. Send word to Echo and Ethel. Expand the Hanzo net, and prepare a new classification for what we find. And what shall we call this classification, Ren-sama? I smirked. The same name as always. I turned toward her, eyes glinting faintly with reflected light. Project Observation. Let's find out what kind of game this world is playing. End of Chapter 51. The Game of Kings and Pawns. 0 comments, 0 vote. Chapter 52. The Steel Sentinel. Chapter 52. The Steel Sentinel. Even after everything we'd learned tonight, political traps, powerful humans, fragile kingdoms, the thought kept circling my mind like a persistent bird that refused to fly away. If Gazef Stranov truly was one of the strongest men in this world, then I needed to see him. Not read about him, not listen to reports, see him. Because numbers were nothing without context. And power. Power was only real when you stood close enough to feel it. I turned from the window and walked toward the center of the central hall, where HIME stood among softly glowing data streams. Her expression was calm as always, serene, composed, but the faint flicker in her eyes told me she already knew what I was about to say. Ren-sama, she began cautiously, you have that look again. I smirked. Which look? The, I'm about to do something dangerous and pretend it's research, look. Okay, maybe she knew me too well. I just want to confirm something, I said, crossing my arms. I need to know what level of power we're actually dealing with in this world. And what better way than to witness one of their strongest fighters in person? Her eyes narrowed. You mean Gazef Stranov? Exactly. Ren-sama, she said slowly, that's too risky. We don't yet know if resurrection magic functions here the same way it did in Yggdrasil. If you were to die. I cut her off with a raised hand. If I die, then I die dramatically and leave a very well-documented corpse. But it won't happen. Ren-sama, I smiled faintly. Come on, HIME, you know me. I've survived worse odds. Besides, I tapped my chest lightly, where faint mana pulsed beneath my divine armor. I'm not just a player anymore. I'm a world enemy. My stats alone are leagues above any normal entity in this world. Her gaze softened, but she still looked unconvinced. Confidence and recklessness often sound similar when spoken aloud. True, I admitted, but confidence has better results. That's debatable. I chuckled under my breath. There's the sass I programmed her with. I'll take precautions, I said finally. I'm not just rushing in blind. For starters. I waved my hand, and a faint light flickered as a world-class item materialized in front of me, a flat crystalline disc etched with luminous runes. The Grand Atlas. Its surface shimmered faintly like liquid glass, then unfolded midair, displaying a topographical projection of an entire region, complete with glowing motes representing every living being within range. With this, I said, pointing at the map, I'll be able to track every single entity within a radius of 100 kilometers. Their positions, their movement patterns, their mana signatures. Nothing can sneak up on me. HIME arched an eyebrow. That's one way to cheat at survival. Not cheating, I corrected with a grin. It's called superior preparedness. Of course, Ren-sama. But, I continued, I'll add one more layer of safety. I snapped my fingers. My body began to shimmer, melting into waves of dark light as my form shifted. The familiar sensation of racial reconfiguration flooded through me, the kind of surreal, almost weightless feeling that came from changing what you were at a fundamental level. My skin turned ashen gray. My limbs elongated, thin and sinewy, bones creaking audibly like stretching metal. My eyes sank into deep sockets that glowed faint green, and when I exhaled, a faint mist escaped my lips. My hearing sharpened until I could pick up the sound of mana currents flowing through the walls. The faintest vibration in the air sang like distant strings. Within seconds, the transformation was complete. From a human-looking doppelganger, I had become one of my saved racial templates, Zombie Ear Eyes Corpse, a rare undead sensor-type race specialized in long-distance data collection and sensory detection. I forgot how weird this body, I muttered, flexing my skeletal fingers. Feels like my bones are humming. HIME tilted her head slightly, studying me. Your form is unsettling, Ren-sama. I grinned, revealing a row of perfectly symmetrical, faintly glowing teeth. Flattery will get you everywhere. The Ear-Eyes Corpse is efficient for reconnaissance, she admitted. But I still recommend backup. Even with your current abilities, the unknown variable of this world remains significant. I sighed dramatically. You're not going to let me have fun alone, are you? No. She raised her hand, and a golden portal flared to life beside her, a swirling gateway inscribed with runes of Nidavellir. The air hummed like struck metal as a deep, rhythmic sound echoed from within the light. When the glow dimmed, something stepped through. The floor trembled slightly as he emerged. Kor, the automaton tank of Nidavellir. I'd built him long ago, alongside HIME, as the first line of defense for the Sanctum's middle levels. Kor stood 3 meters tall, his frame a masterpiece of metal and mana. His body was constructed from layered adamantine plating, etched with runes that pulsed with a soft blue glow. His face resembled a knight's helm, smooth and featureless, save for a single vertical slit where his eyes glowed white-hot. His shoulders were massive, each carved with sigils representing defense and endurance. Thick power conduits, glowing tubes of mana energy, ran across his arms and spine like veins of light. When he moved, every step resonated with a low thunk, as though the air itself respected his weight. On his back was a massive tower shield, nearly twice my height, forged from divine tier alloy known as heartsilver, capable of absorbing kinetic and magical impact with equal ease. His left arm carried a warhammer the size of a carriage wheel, faintly crackling with blue electricity. Yeah, he was exactly as intimidating as I remembered. Kor knelt the moment he saw me, the impact of his motion sending a faint vibration through the marble floor. Master, his voice rumbled like distant thunder. Kor of Nidavellir, reporting as summoned. How may I serve? I waved my skeletal hand lightly. Relax, Kor, you're not under attack, you're just going to be my walking wall for a bit. His head tilted slightly. Walking, wall, bodyguard, HIME clarified delicately. Kor turned toward her and bowed again. Understood, Sub-Corps Administrator. I will protect the Guild Master with all operational capacity. And you will listen to orders, Kor, HIME added with emphasis. Ren-sama does not need heroics. Your function is defense. I will comply. I raised an eyebrow. You're really making me sound fragile, you know that. It's called responsible leadership, Ren-sama. Sounds a lot like babysitting, I muttered. A term that fits remarkably well, she said without missing a beat. Despite my mock annoyance, I couldn't help but smile. The truth was, she wasn't wrong. I might be overconfident sometimes, but HIME's caution was what kept me alive long enough to make those mistakes safely. And with Kor along for the ride, yeah, even if I somehow stumbled into an army, I'd probably just bounce off him. All right, I said finally, stretching my neck until it cracked. We've got a plan. I'll use the map of insight to track Gazef's movements. Once I find him, we observe, quietly. No direct contact unless necessary. Understood, Ren-sama, HIME said, her tone softening slightly. Still, please be careful. You may be strong, but this world doesn't follow the same rules anymore. I smiled faintly, a quiet hum escaping my lips. You sound worried. That's because I am. That made me pause for half a second. I turned toward her holographic form and nodded once. Then I'll come back in one piece. That's a promise. Promises are variables, Ren-sama. But, I will hold you to it. Kor straightened to his full height, shield humming with contained power. Ready when you are, Guild Master. I grinned, the faint green light in my eyes flickering brighter. Let's go, then. Time to meet a so-called hero. As the teleportation sigil began to form beneath our feet, I felt a rush of excitement spark in my chest, the same rush I used to feel back in the early days of Yggdrasil, when every discovery meant danger, and every danger meant fun. New world, new rules, I thought, smirking as light consumed us. Let's see what kind of game you're playing, Gazef Stranov. End of Chapter 52. The Steel Sentinel. Chapter 53. The Scent of Smoke. Chapter 53. The Scent of Smoke. The world shimmered and then went still. The white light of teleportation faded, leaving behind the faint smell of ozone and the cold touch of dawn air. When I opened my eyes, we were standing on uneven ground, grassland, stretching far and wide, painted in gray-blue hues beneath the last shreds of night. Perfect landing, I thought, brushing invisible dust from my coat. Just outside the detection range of anything sentient. No surprises this time. Behind me, Core materialized with a dull thunk, the earth vibrating beneath his 3-meter frame. His armor emitted faint whirring sounds as the mana conduits along his spine flared briefly before settling. Area secure, he rumbled, scanning the horizon. No hostiles detected within immediate perimeter. Good, I murmured. Stay low. This is an observation mission, not a crusade. He turned his head slightly, his glowing white eyes slit focusing on me. Acknowledged, Guild Master. I closed my eyes for a moment, focusing on the mana around me. Then, with a slow exhale, I cast a spell under my breath, Cloak of Silent Dissonance, an illusion-layered ward specifically designed to erase both visual and magical signatures. The spell wrapped around us like a transparent veil, bending light and mana alike. To anyone looking this way, we were simply not there. I double-layered it with another spell, Null Echo, to silence all sound generated by our movement. Even Core's heavy steps became nothing more than soft imprints on the grass. Visual and auditory suppression complete, I said quietly. We're ghosts now. As you command. The faint edge of sunrise was still miles away, a thin amber line barely touching the horizon. The world was quiet except for the rhythmic hum of insects and the distant whisper of the wind. Perfect conditions for reconnaissance. I reached into my coat and pulled out the Grand Atlas, the WCI map I'd brought for this exact purpose. The moment I infused mana into it, the crystal disk lit up, unfurling into a semi-transparent projection. Before me, a 3-dimensional grid of terrain emerged, hills, valleys, scattered forest lines, and faint blue motes marking life signatures. Most were wildlife, some were faint and moving in unison, a group of humans, approximately 50, making steady progress along the main road toward the west. Their mana signatures were neutral. Not enemies, not monsters. Humans. There, I whispered, about 6 kilometers ahead. Core leaned forward slightly. Estimated troop composition. 50 men, maybe a few horses. Armor density low, light infantry, possibly scouts or a patrol. The faintest smirk touched my lips. In judging from their formation discipline, definitely soldiers. I zoomed the map in closer, and a single mana signature caught my attention, brighter, steadier, refined. It pulsed differently from the others, balanced, like a core star in a field of fading lights. Found you, I muttered. That must be Gazef Stranov. The sun still hadn't broken the horizon, but my racial senses didn't need it. The ear-eye's corpse body was built for perception. I could see everything, heat signatures, mana flows, even the faint trails of breath mist rising from the soldiers ahead. 5 kilometers was nothing. I adjusted the focus of my sight, and the distant figures sharpened into clarity. A company of armored soldiers, marching briskly across the dew-soaked fields. Their armor gleamed faintly in the gray light, steel catching the last reflection of the moon. At the front rode 2 men on horseback. One broad-shouldered, wearing full-plate armor, a crimson cloak fluttering behind him. The other slightly smaller, less decorated but sharp-eyed. Their voices carried faintly through the air, soft vibrations I could sense, the tone of command and respect interwoven. Audio lock, I murmured. Filter out background chatter. Immediately, the distant murmur of 50 conversations faded away until only 2 remained. Person 1. Warrior Captain, we're almost at the first village on our patrol route. Person 2. Ah, yes, Vice Captain. Person 1. I hope they're all right. Person 2. So do I. My eyes narrowed slightly. There he is. The second voice was calm but commanding, each word weighted with quiet authority. Even without seeing his face clearly, I could tell, this was a man used to being obeyed, respected, followed. The warrior captain, Gazef Stranov. I'd read his name a dozen times in documents, but hearing him speak, there was something undeniably solid about him. No arrogance, no pretense. Just a soldier doing what he believed was right. Core remained still beside me, silent sentinel that he was, but I caught him turning slightly, his sensors registering the distant heat signatures. 50 human life forms confirmed. That's him, I said quietly. He is strong enough that the king himself would trust him with this mission. But not strong enough to warrant sending him alone. I frowned slightly. Something's not adding up. The soldiers continued talking. Most of the chatter was mundane, discussions about supplies, their families, the weather, even one about someone's pregnant wife. Real people, I thought absently. They talk about life even as they march toward death. That's the difference between them and the code born. But then the same two voices stood out again, captain and vice captain. Their conversation deepened, sharper now, edged with frustration. Vice captain, warrior captain, just having us do the searching is pointless. Couldn't we bring everyone from the warrior band and have them help us? We could also hire adventurers from Irantel to help us out. Why are you doing this? Gazeff. Enough, vice captain. Things might go poorly if someone heard that Imperial Knights were running loose in the kingdom's territory. Vice captain, warrior captain, there's nobody here. You don't have to stand on ceremony, but I hope you can tell me the truth. Was it those nobles? Gazeff. Quote, vice captain, those damned nobles, treating human lives like pieces in their power struggles. And on top of that, since this is the king's domain, they can use any problems here to take shots at the king. Gazeff. Not all nobles think that way. Vice captain. And maybe you're right, warrior captain, and there are some nobles who think of the people. For example, the Golden Princess. But apart from her, there's practically no one else. If only the kingdom was ruled by a dictator, couldn't we ignore those damn nobles and work for the good of the people? Gazeff. If you interfere too strongly, it might lead to a civil war that would tear the kingdom apart. Given that we're facing the threat of the Empire's expanding ambitions, a war like that would be a disaster for the common folk. Vice captain, I know that, but Gazeff. Just leave this matter aside for Gazeff. Smoke. Gazeff. Everyone, we're moving, quickly now. Smoke, I echoed softly, eyes narrowing. I zoomed my vision again, scanning the distance toward the horizon. Sure enough, a thin column of dark smoke was rising from beyond a low ridge, barely visible against the gray morning light. Looks like something's burning, I said. Possible village settlement, Kor replied. Thermal readings confirm high temperature activity approximately 9 kilometers ahead. Fire still active. Then that's our destination. Engagement parameters. None, I said firmly. We follow. No interference. Acknowledged. The soldiers ahead began to quicken their pace. Through the faint ripples of heat, I could see Gazef raise a gauntleted hand, signaling the advance. Horses whinnied, men shouted orders, and the patrol transformed into a moving line of urgency, racing toward the distant smoke. I watched them go for a few seconds before moving as well. Let's move, Kor. The automaton nodded, his massive frame dissolving into semi-invisibility as I renewed the illusion over us. We followed the group silently, matching their speed from a distance. It didn't take long before the smell reached even my dulled undead senses, burnt wood, ash, and the unmistakable copper tang of blood. The ear-eyes corpse body amplified everything. I could hear the faint crackle of fire, the creak of broken beams, and the dying moans of survivors too weak to scream. It wasn't a battle anymore. It was aftermath. When we crested the final ridge, the scene spread before us like a painting of tragedy. The village below was half in ruins, homes smoldering, livestock scattered, bodies sprawled in the mud. Gazef and his men arrived moments later, dismounting and spreading out to assess the damage. Even from a distance, I could see the tension in his movements, the way his shoulders tightened, his jaw set. This wasn't just duty for him. It was personal. Scout the perimeter, he barked, his voice sharp and commanding even from here. Search for survivors. If anyone's still alive, we save them. The men obeyed instantly, fanning out through the burning wreckage. Kor stood beside me, silent as always, his optics scanning. Hostile presence absent. Estimated attackers evacuated less than 1 hour prior. Which means they were organized, I said quietly. Professional hit and run. Too fast for a bandit raid. Too clean for monsters. Conclusion. Human, I said simply. And not just any humans, trained soldiers. I zoomed the Grand Atlas's range wider, searching for any lingering mana trails. There, faint flickers of red dots moving rapidly eastward, already fading. Whoever attacked had retreated efficiently. They're gone, I murmured. At least 20 of them, moving fast. Should we pursue? Kor asked. I shook my head. No, Gazef's already on their trail, even if he doesn't know it yet. Our job is to watch. Understood. I lowered the map slightly and watched as Gazef knelt beside one of the fallen villagers. He didn't flinch at the sight of the corpses. He just closed the man's eyes gently and murmured something I couldn't hear. A prayer, maybe. Even at this distance, I could feel it, his resolve. This was no ordinary soldier. This was someone who carried the weight of his kingdom on his shoulders, and still worried about peasants in forgotten villages. Interesting, I thought. He's not a fool, not a tyrant, not even a zealot. Just a man doing what he believes is right. And in a world like this, that might be the rarest power of all. The sky was starting to lighten now, streaks of orange bleeding through the clouds. The soldiers began organizing the survivors, tending to the wounded, and extinguishing what fires remained. Through it all, Gazef didn't rest. He moved from one villager to the next, personally checking for signs of life, giving orders with calm precision. I watched him silently, studying every motion. Power wasn't always measured in levels. Sometimes, it was in how people carried themselves when the world around them burned. And as I stood there, invisible in the shadows, I couldn't help but wonder. If Gazef represented the strength of this world's humanity, what would happen when humanity met the monsters from Yggdrasil? Ren Sama, HIME's voice echoed faintly through the link. Status update. Observation ongoing, I replied. Gazef Stranov confirmed. Target currently rescuing survivors. Enemy signatures retreating east, no pursuit initiated. Shall I dispatch additional Hanzo units to shadow them? Do it, I said quietly. Let's find out who's behind this attack. Whoever set this up wants the kingdom's hero out of the way, and that means they're more dangerous than they look. Understood, Ren Sama. I will begin data triangulation. Good. End of chapter 53. The Scent of Smoke. To be continued. Thanks for watching.